My name is Emma Davis. I'm writing this from a motel room in Flagstaff, 300 miles from where it happened. The owner keeps asking if I'm okay because I haven't left the room in 4 days except to buy bottled water and granola bars from the vending machine. I tell him I'm fine. I'm not fine. This happened 2 weeks ago at Mather Campground in Grand Canyon National Park, Arizona. I need to write it down before I start questioning what I remember. Already, some details feel slippery, like they're trying to rearrange themselves into something that makes sense. But it doesn't make sense. None of it does. I went to the Grand Canyon with my boyfriend Marcus and our friends Jen and Tyler. We'd planned the trip for months. Marcus and I had been together for 3 years and things had been rocky lately. Not fighting exactly, just distant. The kind of distance that grows so slowly you don't notice until you're standing on opposite sides of a room, wondering when you stopped reaching for each other. The trip was supposed to fix that. 4 days of hiking, stargazing, and disconnecting from our phones. Tyler had just bought a new Winnebago Mini Winnie, one of those compact RVs that sleeps 4 if everyone likes each other enough. He was excited to try it out, and Jen was excited because she'd never been to the Grand Canyon. I was excited because I thought maybe getting away would remind Marcus and me why we'd gotten together in the first place. We arrived on a Thursday afternoon in late September. The campground was about half full, mostly families and retired couples. The trees were sparse, pinyon pines and junipers, and the ground was red dirt and rock. Our site was E17, tucked against the eastern edge of the loop. There was a fire ring, a picnic table, and enough space to park the RV with room for our tent. We didn't need the tent. The RV had a bed over the cab for Marcus and me, and Jen and Tyler would take the convertible dinette. But Marcus insisted on setting up the tent anyway, said he wanted the authentic camping experience. I didn't argue. I was trying not to argue about anything. The first night was fine. We built a fire in the ring, roasted hot dogs, drank beer. Tyler told a long story about getting lost in Zion last year, and Jen showed us photos from her sister's wedding. Marcus sat close to me but not touching. Around 11 we put out the fire and went to bed. I say we put out the fire. What I mean is we dumped 2 buckets of water on it, stirred the ashes with a stick, and poured another bucket for good measure. The fire ring was cold to the touch. I remember because I ran my hand along the stones before we went inside. When I woke up around 3 in the morning to pee, the fire was burning again. Not roaring, just a small flame, maybe 6 inches high, crackling softly in the center of the ring. I stood at the RV window and stared at it for a long time. I was groggy, and my first thought was that we hadn't put it out properly, but I'd felt the cold stones. I'd watched Tyler stir the ashes into black mud. I didn't wake anyone. I put on my shoes and went outside with the water jug. The night was cold and perfectly still. The flame didn't waver when I approached. I poured the entire jug on it, watched the water sizzle and steam. The fire went out. Back in bed, I told myself I'd been half asleep. Campfires sometimes have hot spots that reignite. It happened. I'd learned that in Girl Scouts or something. I rolled over and went back to sleep. In the morning, Marcus made coffee on the RV's propane stove while Jen and Tyler argued about whether to hike the South Rim Trail or the Bright Angel Trail. I looked out the window at the fire ring. The ashes were dry, not muddy dry, like they hadn't been soaked 6 hours earlier. "Did anyone mess with the fire last night?" I asked. Tyler looked up from his oatmeal. "What do you mean?" "It was burning again, around 3. "Burning?" Jen frowned. "We drowned it." "I know, but it was lit. I had to put it out again." Marcus came over and kissed the top of my head. "You were probably dreaming." "I wasn't." "Okay." He said it the way you say okay to a child who insists they saw a monster. "Well, it's out now." We hiked the South Rim Trail. It was beautiful. The canyon stretched out like something from another planet. Layers of red and orange and purple stone dropping away into impossible depth. We took photos, ate sandwiches at a viewpoint, and by the time we got back to the campground that evening, I'd convinced myself Marcus was right. I'd been dreaming, or half awake and confused. We built another fire that night. Tyler had bought a bundle of wood from the camp store and we cooked bratwursts on skewers. The moon was nearly full, and the firelight made our shadows dance across the RV's white exterior. We played cards. Tyler won 5 hands of rummy in a row and Jen accused him of cheating, which made everyone laugh. Marcus's leg pressed against mine under the picnic table. Around midnight, we put out the fire. Same routine, 3 buckets of water, stirring, checking for heat. The ring was cold. We went to bed. At 3:06 a.m., I woke up because Marcus wasn't next to me. I sat up, disoriented, and saw him standing at the window. "What's wrong?" I whispered. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "The fire's burning." I climbed out of bed and looked. He was right. Same small flame crackling quietly in the ring, casting a warm orange glow on the dirt. "What the hell?" I said. We both stared at it for maybe 30 seconds. Then Marcus said, "Maybe there's something in the wood, like chemicals or something, making it spontaneously combust." "That's not a thing." "You got a better explanation?" I didn't. We went outside together this time. The night was colder than the previous one, and the stars were dense overhead. The flame burned steady and bright, about 8 inches tall now. When we got close, I could feel the heat. Marcus grabbed a stick and poked at the wood. It fell apart, into embers, still glowing. "Jesus," he muttered. He dumped a bucket of water on it. The fire hissed, smoked, and died. We stood there for a minute, waiting to see if it would reignite. It didn't. "Maybe we're not putting it out right," Marcus said. "Maybe we need to spread out the coals more or something." "We're putting it out right. Emma, fires don't just relight themselves." "I know that." We went back inside. I didn't sleep. I kept waiting for Marcus to get up again, to tell me it had come back, but he started snoring around 4 and I just lay there listening to him breathe. In the morning, the ashes were dry again. I didn't mention it at breakfast. Jen made pancakes on the propane griddle, and Tyler showed us a brochure for a helicopter tour of the canyon. Marcus suggested we drive to the Desert View watchtower. Everyone seemed happy, relaxed. I didn't want to be the person who made things weird, but when we got back that afternoon and started setting up for another fire, I said, "Maybe we shouldn't." Tyler was crouched by the ring, arranging kindling. "Shouldn't what?" "Have a fire tonight." Jen laughed. "What are we supposed to do, sit in the dark?" "We have the RV lights." "Emma." Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. "It's fine. We'll just make sure we put it out properly." I wanted to explain that we had put it out properly, that something was wrong with the fire ring or the ground beneath it or something I couldn't name. But the way they were all looking at me made me feel like I was overreacting. "Fine," I said. We built the fire. We cooked dinner. We talked about work and friends and places we wanted to travel. Around 11, we put it out the same way we had the previous nights. I insisted we use 5 buckets of water this time. Marcus didn't argue. He helped me stir the ashes until they were soup, and we both felt the stones to confirm they were cold. At 3:06 a.m., the fire was burning again. This time, all 4 of us saw it. Jen woke up first and shook Tyler awake, and Tyler said, "What the fuck?" loud enough to wake Marcus and me. We all crowded around the RV windows and stared at the flame. It was bigger now, maybe a foot tall, and it burned with an intensity that made the shadows around the campsite flicker and jump. "Okay," Jen said. "That's not normal." We got dressed and went outside. The other campsites were dark and quiet. Our fire was the only light in the entire loop. When we got close to it, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The flames weren't quite the right color. Normal campfire flames are orange and yellow with blue at the base. These flames were orange and yellow, but there was something off about them. They looked almost pink in places, and they didn't make noise. No crackling, no popping, just a soft, constant whisper. "Is it me, or does that sound like breathing?" Jen asked. It did. It sounded exactly like breathing. Tyler grabbed a bucket and filled it from the water spigot near our site. He poured it on the fire. The flames shrank but didn't go out. He poured another bucket. The flames flickered, lowered, then surged back up. "What the hell?" Marcus said. He grabbed the shovel we'd brought for digging a latrine trench and started scooping ash and ember out of the ring, flinging it onto the dirt several feet away. The embers glowed where they landed, bright and defiant. Tyler helped, and together they emptied the entire contents of the fire ring onto the ground around us. The fire kept burning in the empty ring. Not embers, not coals. Actual flames, rising from bare stone and dirt. Jen made a sound like a whimper. "I want to leave." "We can't just leave," Tyler said. "It's 3 a.m. "I don't care." "We can't leave a fire burning," Marcus said. His voice was tight. "They'll fine us, or ban us. We need to put it out." "How?" I asked. "We dumped the whole ring and it's still burning." Nobody answered. We stood in a circle around the fire, watching it breathe. Finally, Tyler said, "I'm going to get the camp host." He left. The rest of us stayed because leaving felt like giving up, and giving up felt like admitting something we weren't ready to admit. The fire burned steady. The pink tinge in the flames was more obvious now. Pink, like flesh. Pink, like the inside of a mouth. Tyler came back 20 minutes later, followed by a middle-aged man in a ranger uniform and a fleece jacket. "They said you've got a fire that won't go out?" the ranger said. He had a flashlight, and he shined it on the ring, then at us. "You folks been drinking?" "We put it out 3 times, Marcus said. "It keeps relighting." The ranger walked over and looked at the fire. He crouched down, squinted at it. Then he stood up and said, "Well, that's unusual." "Can you put it out?" Jen asked. He tried. He had a fire extinguisher in his truck, the kind with foam, and he emptied the entire thing into the ring. The foam hissed and bubbled and turned gray. The flames went out. We all stood there, watching the foam settle, waiting. The fire came back. Same height, same pink-tinged color, same soft breathing sound. The ranger took off his hat and rubbed his head. "Huh," he said. "Huh?" Tyler repeated. "That's it, huh? I've been working here 11 years. Never seen anything like this." He walked around the ring, looking at it from different angles. "You didn't bury anything in there, did you? Batteries, chemicals?" "No," I said. "And you're sure you put it out?" "Yes." He stared at the fire for another minute. Then he said, "I'm going to call someone. You folks should probably go inside and get some sleep. I'll have this sorted by morning." We didn't sleep. We sat in the RV with the lights on, watching the fire through the window. The ranger made several phone calls, then sat in his truck with the engine running. Around 4:30, another ranger arrived. A woman with gray hair pulled into a braid. They both walked around the fire, talking in low voices. At one point, the woman poured something from a canister onto the flames. They roared higher, then settled back to their original height. When the sun came up, the fire was still burning. The 2 rangers approached the RV. Marcus opened the door. The woman said, "We're going to need you to pack up and move to a different site." "What about the fire?" I asked. "We're working on it," the male ranger said. "But we can't have you staying this close to it until we figure out what's going on." "What do you think is going on?" Tyler asked. The rangers exchanged a glance. "Could be a gas leak," the woman said. "Natural methane venting from underground. Happens sometimes in areas with geological activity." "Does it usually burn pink?" Jen asked. The woman didn't answer. They moved us to a site on the other side of the campground. It took 2 hours to unhook and rehook the RV, and by the time we were settled, I was exhausted. Marcus suggested we just go home, skip the last 2 days of the trip. Jen agreed, but Tyler had already paid for the full reservation, and he didn't want to lose the money. "It's a weird fire," he said. "That's all. It's not going to follow us." We tried to salvage the day. We drove to the Desert View watchtower, walked around the gift shop, took photos from the overlook. But none of us were really present. We kept checking our phones, expecting a call from the rangers saying they'd figured it out. It was a gas leak or a prank or something explainable. The call never came. When we got back to the campground around 6, our old site, E17, was cordoned off with yellow caution tape. There were 3 ranger vehicles parked nearby and a small crowd of curious campers standing at a distance, watching. The fire was still burning, bigger now. The flames were at least 3 feet high, and the pink color was unmistakable. It looked wrong, obscene, like something that shouldn't exist in daylight. "Jesus Christ," Marcus said. We parked at our new site and walked over. One of the rangers, a young guy with a sunburned nose, stopped us before we got too close. "You need to stay back," he said. "That's our campsite," Tyler said. Or it was. "I know. We're working on it." "Working on what?" I asked. "What's happening?" He hesitated. Then he said, "We don't know. That night we didn't build a fire. We heated soup on the propane stove and ate inside the RV. Nobody talked much. Jen kept looking at her phone, scrolling through news articles and local forums, trying to find anything about fires that wouldn't go out. She found stories about eternal flames, natural gas leaks that had been burning for decades, but nothing like what we'd seen. Around 10, Marcus and I went for a walk. The campground was quiet, most sites dark. We walked the loop until we reached the caution tape around E17. The fire was still burning. 4 feet tall now, maybe taller. The pink had deepened to something close to red, and the sound had changed. It wasn't breathing anymore. It sounded like humming, low and rhythmic, almost musical. "We should leave tomorrow," Marcus said. "Yeah." He took my hand. We stood there for a while watching the fire burn. Then he said, "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For how I've been. Distant. I didn't realize how much until this trip." I squeezed his hand. "Me too." We went back to the RV. Jen and Tyler were already in bed, whispering to each other in the dark. Marcus and I climbed into the loft. He wrapped his arms around me and I pressed my face against his chest, and for the first time in days I felt like maybe things would be okay. At 3:06 a.m., I woke up. The RV was silent except for Tyler's snoring. I lay there for a minute trying to figure out what had woken me. Then I realized the humming. I could hear it even from our new site, a low vibration that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I climbed down from the loft and looked out the window. The fire at E17 was visible through the trees, a red glow against the black sky. It was taller now, much taller. The flames reached at least 10 feet high, twisting and writhing like something alive. I should have woken Marcus. I should have called the rangers. Instead, I put on my shoes and went outside. The campground was deserted. I walked toward E17 past dark RVs and silent tents. The humming grew louder as I got closer, and I realized it had words. Not English, nothing I recognized, but definitely words. A chant or a song. When I reached the caution tape, I stopped. The fire was massive now, a column of red flame that climbed 20 feet into the air. The heat was intense even from 15 feet away. The humming filled my ears, my head, my chest. It felt like it was coming from inside me, and then I saw the shapes in the flames. Not faces exactly. More like the suggestion of faces. Mouths opening and closing in time with the humming. Eyes that weren't eyes but darker spots in the red, tracking my movement. I knew I should run. I knew I should scream. But I couldn't move. One of the shapes pushed forward, stretching the flames outward like a hand reaching through a membrane. The heat intensified. My skin prickled and my eyes watered. The shape kept reaching, kept pushing, and I thought, it's going to touch me, it's going to pull me in. "Emma." Marcus's voice. I turned and saw him running toward me, Tyler and Jen behind him. Marcus grabbed my arm and pulled me backward, away from the fire. "What are you doing?" he shouted. I couldn't answer. The shapes in the flames were pulling back now, retreating into the red. The humming dropped to a whisper. And then, as we watched, the fire began to shrink. Not go out. Shrink. In less than a minute, it had reduced to its original size, a small flame crackling in the ring. The four of us stood there, breathing hard, staring at it. Finally, Jen said, "We're leaving. Right now." Nobody argued. We packed in the dark, throwing everything into the RV without bothering to organize. The rangers found us as we were unhooking the water line. The woman with the gray braid said, "You can't leave yet. We need statements." "Statements about what?" Tyler asked. "About what you saw." "A fire," Marcus said flatly. "We saw a fire that won't go out." "Did you see anything else?" None of us answered. The ranger looked at me. "You were standing there. You were the closest. What did you see?" I opened my mouth. Then I closed it. Because what had I seen? Shapes in the flames? Faces? A hand reaching for me? Saying it out loud would make me sound insane. "Nothing," I said. "Just fire." The ranger didn't look like she believed me, but she stepped aside and let us leave. We drove straight through to Flagstaff. It was dawn by the time we got there, and we were all so exhausted we could barely speak. Tyler pulled into the first motel we saw and got 2 rooms. We said we'd talk in the morning, figure out what to do next. But when morning came, Tyler and Jen were gone. They left a note saying they were driving back to Phoenix and we could keep the RV as long as we needed. Marcus and I stayed. We told ourselves we'd leave in a day or 2, drive back to Colorado, go home, but we didn't. We've been here 2 weeks now. Marcus finally went home 3 days ago. He said he had to get back to work, back to his life. He asked me to come with him. I said I would. I didn't. I keep thinking about the fire, about the shapes in the flames, about the way they reached for me, like they knew me, like they'd been waiting. Last night I fell asleep with the TV on. I woke up at 3:06 a.m. The TV was off. The room was dark except for a faint orange glow coming from the bathroom. I got up and walked over. The sink was full of water, and in the center of the water, just below the surface, was a small flame. I watched it burn for a long time. It was pink-tinged and made no sound except a soft whisper that might have been breathing. I knew I should run. I knew I should check out, get in the car, drive as far as I could. Instead, I dipped my fingers into the water. The flame didn't go out. It wrapped around my hand like a glove, warm and gentle. And I heard the humming again, louder now, closer. I looked in the mirror above the sink. My reflection was smiling. I wasn't. I pulled my hand out of the water and the flame released me. I unplugged the sink and watched the water drain. The flame went with it, spiraling down into the dark. When I turned on the bathroom light, there was nothing there. No scorch marks, no evidence, but my hand still tingles. When I close my eyes, I can see the shapes in the red. And I know with absolute certainty that they're still burning. Not in the sink. Not in the fire ring at E17. They're burning somewhere I can't see yet, somewhere I can't name, and they're getting closer. I should leave. I should check out, get in the car, drive home. But every time I try, I find myself sitting on the bed, staring at the bathroom door, waiting for 3:06 a.m., because part of me wants to see it again. Part of me wants to know what happens when the shapes finally reach me. Marcus calls every day. He says he's worried. He says I need to come home. I tell him I will. Soon. But we both know I'm lying. I keep thinking about what the ranger said. Natural methane venting from underground. Geological activity. Explanations that are supposed to make sense, supposed to make us feel safe. But I know the truth. The fire isn't burning because of gas or geology. It's burning because it wants to. Because it's always been burning long before we got there, long before the campground or the park or the canyon itself. We just gave it a place to be seen. And now it's seen me. Last night, I tried to bury the memory. I poured water on it, scattered the embers, stirred the ashes, but when I woke up at 3:06 a.m., it was burning again. Brighter, closer. And I realized, you can't kill a fire that doesn't need fuel. You can't drown a flame that lives in your head. So I'm writing this down instead. Maybe if I record it, it'll stay on the page. Maybe if I name it, it'll release me. Or maybe I'm just trying to warn whoever reads this. If you see a fire that won't die, don't try to put it out. Don't stand too close. Don't let it see your face. Because once it knows you, it'll follow. And it'll keep burning. Night after night. 3:06 a.m. Every time you close your eyes. And eventually, you'll stop running. You'll stop fighting. You'll open your hand and let it in. I'm going back. Not to the Grand Canyon, not to E17, but to the fire. It's here with me now, in the bathroom, in the mirror, in the space between waking and sleep. And I think I finally understand what it wants. It wants me to burn too. Story 2. My name is Luke Johnson. My father drowned in Mirror Lake, Utah 20 years ago. Last night I heard him calling my name. I should start at the beginning. It was mid-September when I drove my RV into the campground at Mirror Lake. The aspen trees were turning gold and the weekday crowd had thinned out considerably. Only 3 other RVs were parked in the loop when I arrived. A newer Airstream, a beat-up Winnebago that looked like it had seen better decades, and a small camper van with California plates. I'm a software developer, 38 years old, recently divorced. The RV was Karen's idea originally. She thought it would save us money on hotels during road trips. After the split, I kept it in the settlement. She got the house in Portland. Fair trade, I thought, until I realized I had nowhere to park the damn thing. That's how I ended up taking a sabbatical. 3 months off work, driving around the West, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with my life now that the 10-year plan had imploded. Utah wasn't really on my itinerary, but I found myself driving east from Nevada, and the highway signs kept mentioning Mirror Lake. I hadn't been back since I was 18. The ranger at the entrance booth was a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. She took my payment and handed me a site map without much conversation. I asked if Site 14 was available. 14? She checked her computer. Yeah, it's open. You want that one specifically? Family history, I said. She nodded like that explained everything and printed out my receipt. I drove the loop slowly, counting sites. 14 was toward the back, tucked against a line of pine trees with a partial view of the lake through the branches. The picnic table was weathered, but stable. The fire ring showed recent use. I backed the RV into position, leveled it, and connected to the power post. The whole setup took maybe 40 minutes. By then it was late afternoon, and the temperature was dropping fast. Fall comes early at 10,000 feet. My father died on July 3, 1995. I was 18, about to start college in Seattle. We'd driven down from Boise for a long weekend, my parents, my younger sister Emma, and me. Dad had been drinking since noon. Not falling down drunk, just that steady maintenance buzz he'd perfected over the years. Mom kept telling him to slow down, but she said it in that tired way that meant she'd already given up. Around 6 o'clock, he decided to go for a swim. The water was cold, snowmelt cold, but he waded in anyway, beer in hand. I was sitting at the picnic table with Emma, and I remember watching him walk into the lake, the water rising past his knees, his waist, his chest. He turned back once and raised his beer can in a sort of salute. Then he went under. At first I thought he was joking around. Dad liked practical jokes, especially when he was drinking. But he didn't come back up. Not for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. My mother started screaming. I ran into the water, but it was so cold it felt like my legs had been replaced with concrete. By the time I reached where he'd been, there was nothing. Just dark water and my own reflection staring back at me. They found his body 3 days later, caught in some underwater vegetation about 50 yards from shore. The autopsy said he'd had a heart attack, probably instantaneous. The alcohol didn't help, but it wasn't the primary cause. Just bad luck, the doctor said. These things happen. We scattered his ashes here at Site 14 because this was where we'd been camping. Emma was 15 then. She cried through the whole ceremony. I didn't cry at all. I just watched the ashes settle on the ground and thought about how they looked like cigarette ash. I haven't spoken to Emma in 6 years. Different reasons, nothing to do with Dad. People drift apart. That first evening at the campsite, I made dinner on the RV's propane stove, pasta with jarred sauce, and ate while watching the news on my laptop. The Wi-Fi signal was weak but functional. I checked my email. Nothing important. Karen had sent me the final divorce papers 3 weeks ago, and I'd signed them in a FedEx office in Elko, Nevada. That was that. Around 9 o'clock, I turned off the lights and stepped outside. The temperature had dropped into the 40s. I could see my breath. The campground was quiet except for the distant sound of someone's generator and the occasional snap of wood in someone else's campfire. I walked down to the lake. The trail was maybe 100 yards, winding through pine trees and granite outcrops. I used my phone's flashlight to navigate. When I reached the shore, I stood there for a while, listening to the water lap against the rocks. The lake was calm. Across the way, I could see lights from a few cabins on the far shore, maybe a mile distant. "Hey, Dad," I said quietly. Felt stupid immediately. I'm not religious. I don't believe in ghosts. But standing there in the dark, looking at the water that had killed him, I felt like I should say something. The wind picked up, rattling the aspen leaves behind me. I turned to head back, and that's when I heard it. Luke. My name, spoken clearly. A man's voice. I spun around, my phone's light cutting through the darkness. Nothing. No one. The voice had come from the direction of the lake, I was sure of it. "Hello?" I called out. Silence. Just the wind and the water. I stood there for probably 2 minutes, heart hammering, waiting for someone to reveal themselves as a prankster, but the shoreline remained empty. Eventually, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Some trick of the wind, my brain filling in patterns that weren't there. I walked back to the RV, locked the door, and went to bed. I didn't sleep well. The RV's mattress was too soft, and I kept hearing noises, branches scraping the roof, something that might have been an animal snuffling around the propane tanks. Around 2 in the morning, I got up to use the bathroom and noticed that the RV's interior felt colder than it should. I checked the thermostat. It was set to 68, but the actual temperature read 54. The heater must be malfunctioning. I made a mental note to check it in the morning and went back to bed. I woke up at 7:30 to find frost on the inside of the windows. That wasn't right. The RV's insulation was good, and the heater, when it worked, should have kept things comfortable even in freezing temperatures. I checked the propane levels. Full. Flipped the heater off and on again. It made the right sounds, the blower motor kicked in, but the air coming out wasn't warm. Great. I'd have to drive into Camas or Colville to find a repair shop. I made coffee and sat at the dinette, watching the frost slowly melt as the morning sun hit the windows. Through the windshield, I could see my breath condensing in the air. Outside, it was probably 30 degrees, typical for this elevation in September, but inside should have been warmer. I decided to check the exterior propane connections. Sometimes the regulators froze up in cold weather. I pulled on a jacket and stepped outside. The campground was quiet. The Airstream's occupants, an older couple I'd seen briefly yesterday, were packing up, probably heading out for the day. The Winnebago showed no signs of life. The camper van was gone entirely. I walked around to the RV's side panel and opened the propane compartment. Everything looked normal. I was about to close it when I noticed something on the ground. Footprints. Wet footprints leading from the direction of the lake, stopping directly at my RV, then leading back toward the water. They were bare feet, adult-sized. I stood there, staring at them, trying to make sense of it. Someone had walked from the lake to my RV in bare feet, stood here at the propane compartment for how long? Then walked back. My skin prickled. I looked toward the lake, half expecting to see someone watching me, but the tree line was empty. The footprints were already fading as the morning sun dried the ground. I took a few photos with my phone, though I wasn't sure why. What was I going to do? Show them to the ranger? File a report about suspicious wet footprints? I went back inside and locked the door. For the next hour, I tried to work on my laptop, but I couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking about the footprints, about the voice I'd heard last night. My rational mind kept insisting there were logical explanations. Another camper taking a night swim, the voice being carried oddly by the wind, but the explanations felt thin. Around 10 o'clock, I decided to drive into Camas to get the heater looked at. The nearest RV repair shop was called Mountain Mobile Service, and according to Google, they did on-site repairs. I called and explained the problem. The guy on the phone said he could come out that afternoon around 3. That gave me 5 hours to kill. I drove into town, got lunch at a diner, bought some groceries, and generally tried not to think about the campsite. Camas was small, one main street, a few churches, the kind of place where everyone probably knew everyone else. The diner had maybe 6 other customers, all of them looking like locals. I was halfway through a burger when a woman slid into the booth across from me. She was around 60, wearing a fleece jacket and hiking boots. Her face was weathered in that way that suggested she spent a lot of time outdoors. She had a coffee mug in her hand. "You're staying at Mirror Lake," she said. Not a question. I nodded slowly. "Site 14. Thought so. Saw your RV when I was up there yesterday." She took a sip of her coffee. "You know the history of that site?" "My father died there," I said. 20 years ago." She nodded like this confirmed something. "You're not the first one to come back. People do, sometimes, family members. They think it'll give them closure or whatever." She paused. "Does it? I've only been here one night." "Fair enough." She set down her mug. "Name's Patricia. I'm retired Forest Service, worked that district for 30 years. "Luke," I said. "Luke Johnson." "I remember your father's drowning," Patricia said. "We had to drag the lake for 3 days. Found him tangled up in the milfoil near the south shore. Terrible thing. Your mother was beside herself. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded." Patricia leaned back in the booth. "You hear anything unusual up there? At night?" The question made my scalp tingle. "Like what?" "Voices," she said. "People hear voices sometimes, usually at night, coming from the lake. It's why Site 14 stays empty most of the season, even though it's got one of the best views." I set down my burger. "What kind of voices?" "Depends. Usually someone they knew. Someone dead." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather. "Started after your father drowned, actually. Other people reported it before, going back years, but it got worse after 1995. Rangers started logging the complaints. We even had a paranormal investigation team come out in 2003. They recorded some stuff, said it was genuine, but nothing ever came of it." "You're saying the lake is haunted?" "I'm saying people hear things." Patricia shrugged. "Whether that's because of something in the water or something in their heads, I can't tell you. But if you're hearing voices, you're not the first." I thought about telling her about last night, about hearing my name called from the lake, but something stopped me. Instead, I asked, "Did anyone ever figure out why? Why people hear things there specifically?" Couple of theories. The lake's geology is unusual. Lots of underwater caves and channels that might amplify sound in weird ways. Or there's the history. Mirror Lake has had more than its share of drownings. Your father wasn't the first, won't be the last. Maybe it's just people's minds playing tricks, expecting to hear something because of all the deaths. You don't sound convinced. "I spent 3 decades in those mountains," Patricia said. "I've seen things I can't explain. Doesn't mean they're not real." She stood up, leaving her coffee mug on the table. "You want my advice? Don't go to the lake after dark. And if you hear something calling your name, don't answer." She walked out before I could respond. I sat there for a while, appetite gone, trying to process the conversation. Part of me wanted to dismiss Patricia as a local eccentric, feeding off tourist superstitions, but she'd been too calm, too matter-of-fact. She believed what she was saying. I paid my check and drove back to the campground. The repair guy showed up at 3:15 in a white van with Mountain Mobile Service stenciled on the side. His name was Dennis, and he was probably in his late 20s, with a beard and a baseball cap. He checked the heater, tested the propane flow, examined the thermostat, and eventually concluded that the heating element was shot. "Gonna need to order a new one," he said. "Can have it by Friday. Install it Saturday morning." Today was Tuesday, so I'm without heat until then? "Could get you a space heater, run it off the shore power," Dennis suggested. "That'd keep you comfortable enough. Nights are only getting down to the 30s. I agreed to that and paid him for the service call and the space heater. He left around 4:30. I plugged in the space heater, which helped marginally, and made dinner. Canned soup heated on the stove. As the sun set, I found myself dreading nightfall. Around 8 o'clock, I was reading on my tablet when I heard footsteps outside the RV. Not trying to be quiet, just regular walking footsteps on gravel. They circled the RV once, then stopped near the door. I set down the tablet and listened. Silence, then a knock, 3 deliberate raps. I approached the door but didn't open it. Who is it? No answer. Another knock. Same pattern. Rap, rap, rap. I looked through the window. The campsite was dark, lit only by the glow from my RV's interior lights. I couldn't see anyone at the door. What do you want? I called out. The knocking stopped. Footsteps moved away, crunching on gravel, fading toward the lake. I stood there for a full minute, my heart hammering, before I worked up the nerve to unlock the door and step outside. The campsite was empty. The other RVs showed lights. The Winnebago was lit up, and I could hear a TV playing inside. The Airstream had returned, and I could see shadows moving behind its curtains. Everything looked normal, except for the wet footprints leading away from my door, heading toward the lake. Bare feet again. Adult-sized. I followed them with my flashlight. They led down the trail, clear and distinct in the beam of light, until they reached the water's edge. Then nothing. They just stopped, as if whoever made them had walked straight into the lake. Luke. The voice came from directly behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped my flashlight. The beam swung wildly across the trees, the rocks, the water. Nothing. No one. Luke. It was coming from the lake. I was sure of it this time. The voice was my father's. I recognized the timbre, the particular way he said my name, slightly drawn out on the first syllable. I backed away from the water, my light still scanning the darkness. This isn't real, I said out loud. This isn't real. Come here, son. The voice was patient, almost gentle, the way my father used to sound when he wasn't drinking, those increasingly rare moments when he was just my dad, before the alcohol turned him mean or maudlin. I kept backing up, my flashlight beam fixed on the water. The lake's surface was perfectly still, mirror smooth, reflecting the stars above. And then I saw it. A figure, standing waist-deep in the water, maybe 20 yards from shore. It was too dark to make out details, but the silhouette was clear. A man facing me, unmoving. Dad? The word came out before I could stop it. The figure didn't respond. It just stood there, water lapping around its torso. I took a step toward the shore, then stopped myself. Patricia's warning echoed in my head. Don't go to the lake after dark, and if you hear something calling your name, don't answer. But it was my father. Or it looked like my father, and I had so many things I'd never said to him, so many questions I'd never asked. Luke. The voice came again. But this time I noticed something wrong with it. The intonation was right. The tone was right. But there was a flatness underneath, like a recording played at slightly the wrong speed. The figure in the water took a step toward shore. I ran. I crashed through the trees, stumbling over roots and rocks, my flashlight beam jerking wildly. I could hear splashing behind me, the sound of something pulling itself out of the water. I didn't look back. I just ran, my breath coming in ragged gasps until I reached the RV. I fumbled with the door, got it open, threw myself inside, and locked it. Then I pulled all the curtains closed and sat on the floor, my back against the dinette, trying to catch my breath. For a long time, I heard nothing. Then footsteps on gravel, circling the RV. Slow, deliberate steps. They went around once, twice, 3 times. Then they stopped at the door. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Luke. The voice was right outside, inches away from where I sat. Open the door, son. I clamped my hands over my ears, but I could still hear it. That flat, wrong version of my father's voice. You came back for a reason, the voice said. You wanted to see me. Here I am. Open the door. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, the knocking stopped. The footsteps moved away. I heard splashing in the distance, something returning to the water. I spent the rest of the night huddled on the floor, the space heater blasting, all the lights on, waiting for dawn. Morning came slowly. When I finally opened the curtains, the campsite looked normal. Picnic table, fire ring, pine trees. No wet footprints. The ground was dry. I checked my phone. 6:42 a.m. I'd missed 14 calls from a number I didn't recognize. All between 2 and 4 in the morning. I played the voicemail from the first one. Heavy breathing. Water sounds. Then, "Luke, where are you? I'm waiting." My father's voice. Or something using my father's voice. The second voicemail. "You shouldn't have left, we weren't finished talking." Third. "I miss you, son. Your mother misses you. Emma misses you." Fourth. Just breathing and water sounds. I deleted them all. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I needed to leave. Pack up the RV, drive away, forget Mirror Lake ever existed. But when I tried to start the engine, nothing happened. Not even a click. The dashboard lights didn't come on. The battery was dead. Which was impossible. The battery was new, and I'd been plugged into shore power all night. I tried the generator. Nothing. It wouldn't turn over. My phone rang. The unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, I played the message. "Your sister is coming," my father's voice said. "She'll be here by noon. We can all be together again, won't that be nice?" I deleted the message and immediately called Emma. She answered on the third ring. "Luke?" She sounded surprised. We hadn't spoken in years. "Where are you?" I demanded. I'm at work, in Austin. Why? You're not driving to Utah? Utah? No. Luke, what's going on? I closed my eyes. Nothing. Wrong number. Sorry. Luke, wait. I hung up. The voice had lied, or it had been trying to manipulate me, or I didn't know what it was doing. I tried to stay calm. Think logically. The RV wouldn't start, which meant I needed a jump or a new battery. The ranger station was about 3 miles down the road. I could walk there, get help, and be gone by afternoon. I grabbed my jacket and backpack, loaded it with water and snacks, and stepped outside. The Winnebago was gone. So was the Airstream. I was alone in the campground. The trail to the ranger station followed the main road. It was an easy walk, mostly downhill. I set off at a brisk pace, anxious to put distance between myself and Site 14. I'd gone maybe a quarter mile when I heard it. Footsteps behind me, matching my pace exactly. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I turned around. The road was empty. I started walking again, faster now. The footsteps resumed, staying exactly the same distance behind me. I broke into a jog. The footsteps matched me. Finally, I spun around and shouted, "Leave me alone." Nothing. The road stretched out behind me, empty and silent. But when I turned back to continue walking, there was someone standing in the road ahead of me. My father. He looked exactly as I remembered him, 48 years old, slightly overweight, wearing the same Boise State t-shirt he'd been wearing the day he drowned. His hair was wet, plastered to his head. Water dripped from his clothes, pooling around his feet. "You walked away from me last night," he said. "That wasn't very polite." I couldn't speak, my throat had locked up. He took a step toward me. "I've been waiting for you, Luke. 20 years in that water waiting. Do you know what that's like? Do you know how cold it is?" "You're not real," I managed to say. "I'm as real as you are." He smiled, but it was all wrong. Too wide, showing too many teeth. More real, maybe. You're just meat and thoughts. I'm something else now. Something that doesn't need air or warmth or any of the things that failed me. What do you want? "I want you to join me," he said. "The water's not so bad once you get used to it. Your mother's here. Emma's coming. We'll all be together, just like before. Isn't that what you wanted?" Isn't that why you came back? Emma's not coming. She's in Austin. He tilted his head. Is she? Are you sure? She loved this place. She loved me. Despite everything. He took another step closer. You didn't love me though, did you, Luke? You were relieved when I died. I saw it on your face when they pulled my body out. That's not true. You didn't even cry at my funeral. I did. Later. Too late. He was only 10 feet away now. Water continued to drip from him, even though there was no logical source. It pooled on the asphalt, spreading toward my feet. But it's not too late now. We can start over. Father and son. All you have to do is come with me. I took a step back. No. Luke. His voice changed, became softer, more like I remembered. I'm sorry I wasn't a better dad. I'm sorry I drank too much, said things I didn't mean. I'm sorry I left you with all those questions. But we can fix it now. We have time. All the time in the world down there in the cold and the dark. You're not my father, I said. My father is dead. Yes, he said. And you're about to join him. He lunged. I ran. I didn't think, didn't plan, just turned and sprinted back the way I'd come. Behind me, I heard splashing footsteps faster than any human should be able to move. I risked a glance back and saw him running on all fours, water streaming from his body, his face stretched into something that wasn't human anymore. I cut off the road, crashing through the trees, branches whipping at my face. I could hear him behind me, getting closer. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away, had to put distance between myself and that thing wearing my father's shape. I burst out of the trees into a clearing and nearly ran straight into the Winnebago. It was parked at Site 8, right where it had been yesterday. The door was open. Someone was standing in the doorway. Inside, the person said. Now. I didn't hesitate. I ran up the steps and the person, a woman I saw now, maybe in her 70s, slammed the door shut behind me. Get away from the windows, she ordered. I stumbled back into the RV's interior. It smelled like peppermint and old books. The woman locked the door, then pulled all the curtains closed with quick, practiced movements. Sit, she said, pointing to a bench seat. I sat. My legs were shaking so badly I wasn't sure they would have supported me much longer anyway. The woman moved to the kitchenette and poured something from a thermos into a mug. She handed it to me. Drink. It was tea. Hot, with some kind of herb I didn't recognize. I drank it anyway. Outside I could hear footsteps circling the Winnebago. Slow, deliberate. The same pattern I'd heard at my RV last night. It can't come in, the woman said. Not unless you invite it. What is it? My voice came out hoarse. Something that was a man once. Your father, I'm guessing. They usually are. Someone close, someone whose voice you'd recognize. She sat down across from me. She was wearing a purple sweater and jeans, her gray hair pulled back in a braid. My name's Margaret. I've been coming here for 15 years trying to help people like you. Help them do what? Not die. She said it flatly. The lake takes people. Has been for a long time. Your father was one of them. Now it's using him to take others. That's insane. Is it? You saw what's out there. You heard it. Margaret leaned back, crossing her arms. I was a folklore professor before I retired. Started researching this place after my daughter drowned here in 2000. She was 19, went for a late-night swim and never came back. I'm sorry. So am I. Her expression didn't change. I started interviewing people, other families who'd lost someone to the lake, found patterns, the voices, the figures in the water, the way people would just walk in and not come out. The rangers thought it was suicide or accidents, but it wasn't. It was predatory. The footsteps outside had stopped. The Winnebago was silent. How do I get out of here? I asked. You have to break the connection, Margaret said. It's latched onto you because you came back. You opened yourself to it when you went to the shore last night. Now it knows your voice, your memories. It'll use them against you. How do I break it? Fire, she said. The thing it uses to manifest the memory of your father. It's sustained by something physical, something from when he died. You need to find it and burn it. What am I looking for? Could be anything. A piece of clothing, a personal item, something that was with him when he drowned. It'll be near the water. She stood up and went to a closet, pulling out a flare gun. Take this. When you find what you're looking for, burn it. That should sever the connection. Should. It's worked before, mostly. She pressed the flare gun into my hands. You don't have much time. The longer it's attached to you, the harder it'll be to break free. Eventually, you won't be able to resist anymore. You'll walk into the water, just like everyone else. I looked down at the flare gun. It felt absurdly inadequate. What if I just leave? Get in my RV and drive away. Your RV won't start. It won't until this is over. Margaret moved to the door. I'll go out first. Create a distraction. You run for the lake. Look for anything that doesn't belong. You'll know it when you see it. How? You'll know. Before I could protest, she unlocked the door and stepped outside. I heard her voice, strong and commanding. Get away from here. You're not welcome. I moved to the door, flare gun in hand. Through the crack, I could see Margaret standing in the campsite, facing something I couldn't quite see. She was holding something. A cross? No, something else, made of wood and twine. Go, she shouted at me. I ran. I sprinted past her, past the thing that stood at the edge of the clearing. My father's shape, but wrong, too tall now, arms too long, and headed for the lake trail. Behind me, I heard Margaret chanting something in a language I didn't know. The trail seemed longer than before, the trees pressing in on both sides. I could hear splashing behind me, getting closer. I pushed myself faster, my lungs burning. I burst out onto the shore. The lake stretched out before me, mirror smooth, reflecting the afternoon sky. I scanned the waterline, looking for anything unusual. There, 20 yards down the shore, half buried in mud. A beer can, rusted, old, but I recognized the brand. Budweiser, my father's favorite. I ran for it, dropping to my knees in the mud. The can was heavier than it should be, weighed down by something inside. I grabbed it, just as something crashed through the trees behind me. I turned to see my father, the thing that had been my father, standing at the tree line. It was barely recognizable now, its body elongated, face stretched into something predatory. That's mine, it said, its voice like rocks grinding together. I raised the flare gun and fired. The flare hit the beer can in my hand, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the aluminum erupted in white-hot flame, so bright I had to look away. I dropped it in the mud where it continued to burn, the fire spreading across the water's surface like gasoline. The thing that had been my father screamed. A sound that wasn't human, had never been human. It lurched toward me, then stopped, its body beginning to smoke. The fire from the can was spreading to it now, consuming the water that dripped from its form. You can't, it said, its voice degrading into static. You can't. I'm your father. The fire consumed it. For a moment I saw my father as he actually was in those final seconds. Not the monster, but just a man, confused and afraid, drowning in cold water. Then he was gone, dissolving into ash that scattered across the lake's surface. The fire went out. The lake returned to its mirror-smooth state, reflecting nothing. I sat there in the mud for a long time, shaking, the spent flare gun still in my hand. Eventually, Margaret found me. She helped me up, guided me back to the campground. We didn't speak. My RV started on the first try. The battery was fine. Everything was fine. I packed up and left that afternoon. I didn't say goodbye to Margaret. I didn't report anything to the rangers. I just drove, putting as many miles as possible between myself and Mirror Lake. That was 3 weeks ago. I'm writing this from a motel in Oregon, just outside Portland. I've been having trouble sleeping. Not because of nightmares, I don't dream at all anymore, but because sometimes late at night I hear footsteps in the hallway outside my room. They stop at my door. They wait. And sometimes when I look in the mirror, my reflection blinks a half-second after I do. I'm driving to the coast tomorrow. I've always liked the ocean. I think I'll go for a swim. The water's supposed to be beautiful this time of year. Cold, but beautiful. Story 3. My name is Vanessa King. What happened at Fish Lake National Forest in Utah last September still doesn't make sense to me, but I need to write it down before I forget the details. Or before I convince myself it didn't happen the way I remember. My husband Derek and I had been planning the trip for months. We'd just bought a used RV, a 2015 Winnebago that Derek found on Craigslist for a steal. The previous owner seemed eager to get rid of it, barely negotiated on price. Derek joked that the guy probably just needed quick cash for a divorce or something. We didn't think much of it. We'd been married 6 years and hadn't taken a real vacation in 3. Derek worked IT for a hospital system, constantly on call. I taught middle school English, which meant summers off but school years that drained every ounce of energy I had. We needed this. Just 2 weeks, no phones except for emergencies, no internet, no students or server crashes, just us and the Aspens. Fish Lake seemed perfect, remote enough to feel like an escape, but not so isolated we'd panic if something went wrong with the RV. Derek had done his research, found a dispersed camping area near Fish Creek that allowed RVs, far enough from the official campgrounds to give us privacy. The reviews online mentioned the fall colors, the hiking trails, the quiet. We left Salt Lake City on a Thursday morning, September 14th. The drive took about 3 hours, winding through increasingly sparse towns until we hit the national forest. The aspens were just starting to turn, patches of yellow gold against the evergreens. Derek drove while I navigated, though the directions were simple enough. Forest Road 036, then a turnoff onto an unmarked dirt road that led to a clearing. We arrived around 1 in the afternoon. The clearing was bigger than I'd expected, maybe 50 yards across with room for 4 or 5 RVs, though ours was the only one there. A fire ring sat in the center, blackened stones arranged in a circle. The trees pressed close on all sides, dense enough that I couldn't see more than 20 feet into the forest. Perfect, Derek said, killing the engine. Told you this would be worth it. We spent the rest of that first day setting up. Derek checked the RV's hookups and water system, while I arranged our supplies inside and set up the small camp chairs near the fire ring. By 6, we had dinner going. Just hot dogs and beans, nothing fancy, and we're sitting outside watching the light fade through the aspens. That's when we first saw them. Not them, exactly. Him. A man, walking past our clearing maybe 30 yards away, visible between the tree trunks. He wore a red jacket and a baseball cap, hands in his pockets. He didn't look our way, just walked parallel to our sight heading south. Huh, Derek said. Didn't think anyone else was out here. Maybe he's camping further down, I said. Or just hiking through. The man disappeared between the trees. We finished dinner, had a beer each, and turned in early. The RV had a decent mattress, better than I'd expected. I fell asleep to the sound of wind moving through the aspens, that distinctive rustling that's different from other trees. Friday morning I woke before Derek. 6:30. The sun just starting to filter through the curtains we'd hung in the RV windows. I made coffee on the small propane stove, trying to be quiet. Derek mumbled something and rolled over. I took my coffee outside. The morning was cold, probably mid-40s, my breath visible in the air. I sat in one of the camp chairs with a blanket around my shoulders and just listened. Birds, the aspens, water running somewhere nearby, probably Fish Creek. Then I saw him again. The same man. At least I assumed it was the same man. Same red jacket and cap. Walking through the trees. Same direction as yesterday. South through the forest. Same posture, hands in pockets. Same distance from our clearing. I almost called out to him, maybe just a friendly wave, but something stopped me. He seemed focused on wherever he was going, and I didn't want to startle him or come off as intrusive. We were all out here for solitude after all. He disappeared into the trees. I drank my coffee and didn't mention it when Derek woke up 20 minutes later. We spent Friday hiking. Derek found a trail that followed Fish Creek upstream, narrow and barely marked, but easy enough to follow. The creek ran clear over rust-colored rocks, cutting between stands of aspen and pine. We saw a deer, several jays, no other people. By lunch, we were 2 miles in and stopped on a flat rock to eat the sandwiches I'd packed. "This is exactly what I needed," Derek said. He looked more relaxed than I'd seen him in months, the constant tension gone from his shoulders. "No regrets about the RV?" I asked. "None. Best purchase we've made." We got back to our clearing around 3. I was tired, my legs sore from the hiking. Derek suggested we take it easy the rest of the day, maybe drive into town tomorrow for supplies. We had enough food for several more days, but could use some fresh vegetables, maybe pick up more beer. While Derek napped in the RV, I sat outside and read. A novel I'd been meaning to finish for months, one of those literary fiction things that all my colleagues loved, but I found pretentious. Still, it passed the time. Around 5, movement caught my eye. The man in the red jacket. Walking south through the trees, same path, same distance from our clearing. I put down my book and stood up. Watched him until he disappeared into the forest. Same steady pace, hands in pockets, never looking toward our sight. 3 times now. Same direction, same time roughly. Evening both times yesterday and today. Derek emerged from the RV yawning, asking what I wanted for dinner. I mentioned seeing the hiker again. "Red jacket guy?" Derek stretched. "Huh. Maybe he's doing sections of a trail coming back to his car each day." Maybe. But that didn't quite make sense. The direction he was walking didn't align with any trailhead I knew about. And something about the repetition bothered me, though I couldn't articulate why. We made spaghetti for dinner and played cards by lantern light. I won 3 hands of gin rummy. Derek won 2. We turned in around 10, both exhausted from the hiking. Saturday morning, I woke at 6 again, some internal clock keeping me on a schedule even without my alarm. Derek was still asleep. I made coffee and went outside. 6:30, almost exactly, same as yesterday, the man walked past. Red jacket, baseball cap, hands in pockets, south through the trees, same path, same distance. I stood there with my coffee getting cold in my hands, watching until he disappeared. When Derek woke, I told him. He came outside in his pajamas and we waited, but obviously the man didn't come back. Once was routine, 4 times was a pattern. "That's weird," Derek admitted. "Same time every morning?" "Give or take 10 minutes. Maybe he's got OCD or something, likes routine on his hikes. For 4 days straight? Same exact route?" Derek shrugged. "People are weird, Van. Maybe it's meditative for him. Why does it bother you?" "It doesn't bother me exactly. It's just odd." "Want me to call out to him tomorrow? Ask if he needs anything?" "No," I said quickly enough that Derek looked at me funny. "I mean, if he wants to be left alone, we should respect that." But the truth was something else. Something I didn't want to admit even to myself. The man's walk seemed wrong somehow. Not the gait itself, but the consistency, the exactness, like watching a recording play over and over. We drove into Loa that morning, the closest real town, picked up groceries at a small market, topped off the RV's gas tank, got lunch at a diner that served enormous portions of mediocre food. Derek bought a local newspaper, more as a novelty than anything. The headlines were about water rights and a high school football game. We got back to our clearing by 2. Derek wanted to nap again. He'd been staying up later than me each night reading by flashlight, so I took a walk by myself. Not far, just a 1/4 mile or so along the unmarked dirt road we'd driven in on, then looping back through the trees. The forest was quiet in a way that cities never are. Not silent, but empty of human noise. Just wind and birds, and the occasional rustle of something small moving through the undergrowth. I found myself walking carefully, trying not to snap too many twigs, though I couldn't have said why. When I got back to the clearing, I stopped at the tree line instead of walking directly to the RV. Derek was outside, talking to someone. No, not talking to someone. talking to himself. He stood near the fire ring, facing south into the forest, hands animated as he spoke. I couldn't hear the words from where I stood, but his body language was clear. He was having a conversation. I stepped into the clearing. "Derek?" He turned, startled. "Oh, hey, you're back. Who were you talking to?" "What?" "No one, just thinking out loud." "You were having a conversation." "Was I?" He laughed, but it sounded forced. "Sorry, sometimes I work through problems verbally, you know that. Was thinking about a server issue from before we left." I let it drop, but I didn't believe him. Derek didn't think out loud. In 6 years of marriage, I'd never seen him do that. He was the opposite, kept everything internal until he'd worked it through completely. That night I couldn't sleep. Derek dozed off around 11, but I lay awake listening to him breathe and the wind outside and the sounds of the forest at night. Around 1 in the morning I got up and looked out the RV's front window. Nothing, just darkness and the faint shapes of trees against the slightly less dark sky. I made tea and sat at the small table, reading by the LED lantern we'd hung from the ceiling. My book felt stupid now, the literary pretensions even more obvious. I put it down and just sat there, drinking tea and listening. Around 2 I heard footsteps. Not heavy, not close. Just the sound of someone walking nearby, twigs snapping under boots. They passed on the south side of the clearing, the same area where I'd been seeing the man in the red jacket. I wanted to wake Derek, but what would I say? Someone's walking in the forest at 2 in the morning? So what? Maybe it was a night hiker. Maybe someone from another camp couldn't sleep either. The footsteps faded. I went back to bed, but didn't fall asleep until after 4. Sunday morning I didn't get up at 6:30. I forced myself to stay in bed until 8, Derek still sleeping beside me. When I finally got up and made coffee and went outside, I half expected the man to be walking past at that very moment, some cosmic joke proving he'd been there all along at different times, not just the ones I'd witnessed. But the forest was empty. Birds sang. Wind moved the aspens. Nothing else. Derek emerged around 9, looking more rested than I felt. We made breakfast, eggs and bacon, using up the last of our ice, and discussed whether to stay another week or head home early. My school started back up on the 25th, giving us wiggle room either way. "I'm having a good time," Derek said, "aren't you?" Yeah, it's been good." "You seem tense, though. Are you okay?" "Just not sleeping great. Different bed, I guess." 6:30 that evening, the man walked past. Same red jacket, same everything. Derek was inside the RV at the time, didn't see him. I didn't mention it. Monday morning, 6:30, same thing. I'd set a watch to check the time. 6:28 when he appeared, 6:31 when he disappeared into the trees heading south. Monday evening we had an argument. Not a big one, but sharp enough to leave residue. Derek wanted to drive to Richfield, bigger town about an hour away, maybe see a movie or find a decent restaurant. I wanted to stay at the camp. He accused me of being antisocial. I accused him of not being able to unplug even on vacation. "We came out here to get away," I said, "not to find more towns and people and distractions." "We came out here to spend time together," he shot back. "But you've been weird since we got here. Jumpy, always watching the trees." "I'm not." "You are. Something's bothering you, and you won't tell me what." I wanted to tell him then, about the man, about the footsteps at night, about catching Derek having a one-sided conversation with the forest. But it all sounded insane when I tried to put it into words. "I'm fine," I said. "I'm just tired." We went to bed angry, Derek on one side of the RV's small bed, me on the other. Neither of us said goodnight. Tuesday morning I woke at 5:30, too early even by my recent standards. Derek was still asleep. I made coffee as quietly as I could and took it outside to wait. 6:30. The man appeared right on schedule, walking his route through the trees. But this time I was ready. I'd positioned myself near the southern edge of the clearing, closer to his path. As he passed, I called out, "Hello, excuse me." He didn't stop, didn't even slow down, just kept walking, hands in pockets, face angled forward. "Hey," I called louder. "I'm talking to you." Nothing. He disappeared into the trees. I stood there feeling stupid and angry and frightened, though I couldn't have said why I was frightened. Guy was probably wearing headphones, or didn't want to be bothered. Nothing sinister about that, but when I turned back toward the RV, Derek was standing in the doorway in his boxers looking at me. "Who were you yelling at?" "The hiker, red jacket guy. He just walked past." Derek looked toward the trees, then back at me. "Van, there's no one there. He was just here. Walked right past, same as always. I didn't see anyone." "You weren't looking. You just woke up. I heard you yelling. I looked where you were looking. There wasn't anyone there." We stared at each other. Derek's expression wasn't quite concern, wasn't quite alarm. Something in between. "Maybe you saw a deer or something," he said carefully. "In the early light, with a brown coat, it could look like—" "I know what a fucking deer looks like, Derek. It was a man. Same man I've been seeing every day since we got here." Okay, I believe you. Come inside, you're freezing." But he didn't believe me. I could see it in his face, hear it in his voice. He thought I was losing it. I went inside. We didn't talk about it again. Tuesday afternoon, I took another walk, needing space from Derek and the RV and everything. I followed Fish Creek downstream this time, away from the trail we'd hiked Friday. The creek got wider, faster, cutting between large boulders. I had to watch my footing on the slick rocks. A mile downstream, I found a second clearing, another fire ring, another flat area big enough for RVs. No vehicles, no signs of recent use, but clearly a campsite. And in the dirt near the fire ring, I could see tire tracks, recent ones judging by how sharp the edges were. Someone else had been here. Within the last few days, probably. I walked the perimeter of the clearing, looking for other signs. Found a cigarette butt ground into the dirt. Found a beer can half buried near a tree, the label faded but still readable, Coors Light. Found a scrap of red fabric caught on a low branch. Red, like the jacket. I pulled the fabric free and held it in my palm. Just a scrap, maybe 2 inches square. The kind of thing that tears off on a branch without you noticing. Nylon or polyester, waterproof material. Exactly what you'd expect from a hiking jacket. I put it in my pocket and headed back to our camp. Derek was grilling chicken when I got back, the small propane grill set up near the fire ring. He'd made a salad too, using the vegetables we'd bought in Loa. Trying to smooth things over from the morning, probably. "Hey," he said when he saw me. "Good walk?" "Found another campsite downstream. Looks like someone was there recently." "Yeah? Maybe that's where Red Jacket Guy is staying." "Maybe." I didn't mention the fabric in my pocket. We ate dinner and Derek suggested a game of cards, but I said I was tired. I went to bed at 8:30, listened to Derek moving around outside for another hour, then heard him come in and lie down beside me. I waited until his breathing went slow and deep. Then I got up, pulled on shoes and a jacket, and slipped outside. The moon was 3/4 full, bright enough to see by once my eyes adjusted. I stood near the fire ring and looked south into the trees, toward where the man always walked. Nothing. Just trees and shadows and moonlight. I don't know what I was expecting. Him to appear at some other hour, proving he was real? Some sign of where he was going? I walked to the southern edge of the clearing and stepped into the trees. The forest at night is different. Sounds amplify. Distances become impossible to judge. The spaces between trees feel both infinite and claustrophobic. I walked slowly, trying to follow what I thought was the path the man took, but without daylight I couldn't be sure. 20 yards in, I found the first marker. Not a marker exactly. A tree with a slash of paint on it. Faded orange, about chest height. The kind of marking that indicates a trail or boundary. I kept walking, looking for more. Found another painted tree 30 feet further on. Then another. They led deeper into the forest, heading south-southeast. I followed them for maybe a 1/4 mile, moving carefully in the moonlight. Then I saw the light. Not a campfire. Too steady, too white. A lantern or flashlight glowing through the trees maybe 50 yards ahead. I stopped walking, held my breath and listened. Nothing. No voices, no movement. Just the light, steady and unmoving. I should have gone back, should have woken Derek or at least waited for daylight. But something pulled me forward, the same compulsion that had made me follow the painted trees. I crept closer. 30 yards. 20. The light grew brighter but didn't reveal its source. Too many trees between me and it. 10 yards away I could finally see. The light came from inside a tent. A small backpacking tent. Green fabric, maybe 6 feet long. The kind you can carry in your pack for solo trips. It sat in a tiny clearing, barely larger than the tent itself, and the light inside created shadows against the fabric. One shadow, person-shaped, sitting upright, perfectly still. I stood there watching. The shadow didn't move, didn't shift position, didn't lie down, didn't stand up. Just sat there, motionless. 5 minutes. 10. I lost track of time. The shadow never moved. Finally, I backed away, turned and walked back toward our camp, following the painted trees in reverse. Every few steps I looked over my shoulder, half expecting the light to be following me. But it stayed where it was. I made it back to the RV and climbed into bed beside Derek, my heart hammering. He didn't wake. Wednesday morning I slept through 6:30. When I woke at 8, Derek was already up and outside. I found him sitting in one of the camp chairs, staring south into the trees. "You okay?" I asked. He jumped slightly like I'd startled him. Yeah, fine. Was just thinking." "About what?" "Nothing important, work stuff." We made breakfast in silence. I kept catching Derek glancing toward the trees, that same southward direction. When I tried to follow his gaze, I couldn't see anything worth looking at. Around noon, Derek said he wanted to go for a walk, alone. He needed to think, needed space. I said fine, trying not to sound hurt. He left heading south, the same direction. I gave him 20 minutes, then followed. I found the painted trees easily in daylight, followed them to the small clearing where I'd seen the tent. But the tent was gone. No sign it had ever been there. No trampled grass, no fire ring, no trash. Just an empty space between the trees. I kept walking. The painted trees continued further south, and I followed them for another half-mile before the marking stopped. Or maybe I lost the trail. Either way, I found myself in unfamiliar forest with no clear path back. I stood there trying to get my bearings. The sun was high, roughly south-southwest based on the time. Our clearing should be north-northeast, maybe a mile away. That's when I heard Derek's voice. Not calling for me, not talking to me, just speaking, steady and conversational, coming from somewhere to my left. I moved toward the sound, stepping carefully. Through the trees I could see him, maybe 40 yards away, standing in a small clearing. He faced away from me, hands in his pockets. He was talking to someone. I still couldn't hear the words, but his posture was clear. He was having a conversation, pausing for responses, nodding, laughing once. I circled around, trying to see who he was talking to. Got to an angle where I could see his face in profile. He was alone. No one stood in front of him. No one nearby at all. But he was clearly talking to someone, responding to things they said, engaged in full conversation with empty air. I must have made a sound, snapped a branch, or gasped, because Derek's head whipped around toward me. "Van, what are you doing here?" I followed you. I got worried." He walked over, smiling like nothing was wrong. "I'm fine. Just went for a walk, like I said." "Derek, who were you talking to?" "What? No one. I was just..." "Don't lie to me. I watched you. You were having a conversation with someone." His smile faded. "Van, you're scaring me. There's no one here but us." "I know, that's what I'm saying. You were talking to empty air." "I wasn't." He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "Look, maybe I was talking to myself. I do that sometimes, I told you. I work through things verbally. No, you don't. You've never done that. How would you know? You're not with me every second of every day. We stood there in the forest, 3 feet apart, and I realized I didn't know which of us was losing our minds. Him for talking to no one, or me for seeing a man who might not exist. Let's go back, Derek said. Both of us. Together, okay? I nodded. We walked back to camp side by side, not speaking. That afternoon, we both stayed in the RV. Derek read. I pretended to read. Every time I looked up, he was staring out the window toward the trees. 6:30 came and went. I didn't get up to look. Around 8, Derek made dinner. Canned soup and crackers. Nothing complicated. We ate in the RV with the door closed, even though it was still light out. I think we should leave tomorrow, Derek said. Okay. I mean, we've had a nice time, but I'm starting to feel cooped up, and you're not sleeping well. Maybe we'd be more comfortable at home. Okay, I said again. You're not going to argue? No, I think you're right. Relief crossed his face. Good. We'll pack up in the morning, hit the road by 9, be home before dinner. Sounds good. But I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake listening to Derek's breathing, slower and deeper than usual, almost like he'd been drugged. Around midnight, I got up and looked out the window. The man in the red jacket stood in the center of our clearing, not walking, just standing there in the moonlight facing the RV, hands at his sides, baseball cap shadowing his face. My breath caught. I stepped back from the window, heart racing. When I looked again, he was gone. Thursday morning, we started packing. Derek worked methodically, disconnecting hoses and securing cabinets and checking propane tanks. I gathered our clothes and supplies, stuffing things into bags without much organization. Around 8:30, Derek went outside to do a final check of the RV's exterior. I was in the back bedroom packing the last of our things when I heard him call out, "Van, come look at this." I went outside. Derek stood near the fire ring, looking at the ground. Someone had arranged rocks in a pattern, not the fire ring itself, but surrounding it. A circle of stones, evenly spaced, maybe 10 feet in diameter. They hadn't been there yesterday. "Did you do this?" Derek asked. "No. Did you?" "No." We looked at each other. Derek's face had gone pale. "Maybe it was here all along and we didn't notice," I said, even though I knew that wasn't true. "Yeah, maybe." He walked over and kicked one of the rocks, scattering the pattern. "Let's get out of here." We finished packing in silence. By 9:15 we were in the RV, Derek behind the wheel, everything secured for travel. He started the engine. It caught, ran for 3 seconds, then died. Derek tried again. Same result, momentary ignition, then nothing. "Fuck," he muttered. He tried 5 more times. Same thing every time. "What's wrong with it?" "I don't know. It was running fine yesterday. Maybe the battery?" He popped the hood and got out to look. I followed. We stood there staring at the engine like that would help, neither of us knowing anything about RV mechanics. "We'll have to call for a tow," Derek said. "Get it to a shop in Loa or Richfield. We don't have cell service." Fuck. He pulled out his phone anyway, held it up. No bars. Okay, so one of us walks back to the main road. Probably get service there or flag down another car. "I'll go," I said. "You sure?" "Yeah. You should stay with the RV." And I didn't want to be there alone is what I didn't say. I set out at 9:30, walking the dirt road back toward Forest Road 036. It was maybe 2 miles, easy walking on flat ground. The morning was cool and clear, aspens rustling in a light breeze. I'd walked for maybe 20 minutes when I saw him, the man in the red jacket, walking toward me on the road, hands in his pockets. I stopped. We were maybe 50 yards apart. He kept walking, steady pace, not slowing down. As he got closer, I could see more details. White baseball cap with no logo, brown hiking boots, dark pants. The jacket was bright red, slightly faded, with a zipper up the front. 30 yards, 20. Hey, I called out. Excuse me. He didn't respond, didn't look at me, just kept walking. 10 yards. I'm talking to you. Can you hear me? 5 yards. He walked past me on the road, close enough that I could have reached out and touched him. I saw his face in profile, middle-aged, clean-shaven, no particular expression. He looked straight ahead and kept walking. Wait. I turned to follow him. Please, I need help. Our RV broke down. Do you have a phone? He kept walking. I started after him, maintaining distance at first, then walking faster when he didn't acknowledge me. Hey, stop, please. He didn't stop. I broke into a jog, then a run. He maintained the same steady walking pace, but somehow stayed ahead of me. I ran harder, legs pumping, breath coming fast. The distance between us didn't change. He walked, I ran. The gap stayed constant. I stopped, bent over with my hands on my knees, gasping. When I looked up, he was still walking away, same steady pace, already 50 yards ahead. I watched until he disappeared around a bend in the road. Then I turned and walked back toward camp. Derek was outside the RV when I got back, pacing near the fire ring. That was fast, he said. Did you get through? No, I didn't make it to the main road. Why not? I told him about the man in the red jacket, how he wouldn't respond, wouldn't stop, how I couldn't catch him even running. Derek listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, Van, I need to tell you something. Okay. I've been seeing him too. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. You have? Not walking past camp. I've been seeing him in the forest, when I go for walks. He's always there, just standing, watching, or sometimes walking parallel to me, staying at the same distance. I thought I was going crazy. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? He laughed, but it wasn't funny. We both thought we were losing it. So he's real, I said. He's actually real. I don't know. Maybe we're both losing it. That's not how shared delusions work, Derek. How would you know? Fair point. I teach middle school English, not psychology. Look, Derek said, the RV isn't starting. We need help. I'll walk to the main road, see if I can flag someone down or get cell service. I just tried that. I know. But what else are we going to do? We can't stay here forever. Can't we? The words were out before I'd thought about them. Derek stared at me. What? Nothing. Sorry. Go. Try to get help. He left at 10. I watched him walk down the dirt road until the trees hid him from view. I waited in the camp chair watching the tree line. 11 o'clock came. Noon. No Derek. At 1, I went inside the RV and tried the engine myself. It caught, ran for 3 seconds, died. Same thing. 2 o'clock. Still no Derek. I walked down the road in the direction he'd gone. Made it maybe half a mile before I saw him coming back. Any luck? I called out. He shook his head. I walked for over an hour. The road just kept going. No main road, no other cars, no cell service. It doesn't make sense. We only drove for like 10 minutes from the highway when we came in. Derek, that's not possible. Forest Road 036 is right there. I'm telling you, I walked for over an hour and didn't find it. Either I got turned around somehow or... He trailed off. Or what? Nothing. Let's get back to camp. We walked back in silence. The sun was starting to lower in the sky, shadows lengthening through the aspens. At camp, Derek tried the engine again. Same result. We should probably stay put, he said. Someone will come by eventually. Rangers patrol these areas, right? I don't know. Maybe. We made dinner from canned goods and stale bread. Ate without talking. The sun set. Darkness came fast, the way it does in forests. Derek built a fire. We sat beside it, not speaking, watching the flames. At 6:30, I heard footsteps. Derek heard them too. We both stood up, looking toward the sound. The footsteps circled our clearing, steady and even, crunching through the undergrowth. They went all the way around, north, west, south, east, then faded into silence. Maybe it was a deer, Derek said, but his voice shook. At 7, the footsteps came again. Same pattern, same speed, circling our clearing. At 7:30, they came again. It's him, I whispered. He's walking in circles around us. Derek didn't argue. 8 o'clock. Footsteps. 8:30. 9. We stayed by the fire, both of us silent now, listening to the pattern repeat. Every 30 minutes, like clockwork, the footsteps circled our clearing. At midnight, Derek said, I need to try something. What? I'm going to follow him, see where he goes. Derek, no. We can't just sit here. We need to understand what's happening. We need to stay together. Then come with me. But I couldn't. Some primal part of my brain screamed not to leave the firelight, not to step into those trees in the dark. I'll be back in 10 minutes, Derek said. If I'm not, don't come looking. Just stay by the fire. The footsteps started again at 12:30. Derek grabbed a flashlight and walked into the trees after them. I sat by the fire, watching the tree line. 5 minutes, 10, 15, 20 minutes. No Derek. 30 minutes. The footsteps came again, circling the clearing. I heard them pass right by where Derek had entered the trees, but I didn't hear his footsteps mixed with them. Only the one set, steady and even. 1 in the morning. Footsteps. Still no Derek. 1:30. 2. 2:30. The sky started to lighten around 5. I'd fed the fire all night, burning through most of our firewood. My eyes felt gritty with exhaustion, but I hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. At 6:30, Derek walked into the clearing. He came from the south, same direction the man always walked. Same steady pace, hands in his pockets. He walked past me without looking, continued through the clearing, and disappeared into the trees on the north side. Derek? I called after him. He didn't respond, didn't stop, just kept walking. I ran after him, caught up at the tree line, grabbed his arm. He turned and looked at me. His face was Derek's face. His eyes were Derek's eyes. But the expression was wrong. Blank. Empty. Derek, talk to me. What happened? Where did you go? He smiled, not Derek's smile, something else wearing Derek's mouth. I found him, Derek said. I found where he goes. Where? Where does he go? He walks in circles. Always has. Always will. It's what this place does. It makes you walk in circles until you understand. Understand what? That there's nowhere else to go. That this is where you are. That this is where you'll always be. He pulled his arm free and started walking again, heading north through the trees. I followed him for maybe 20 minutes. He never deviated from his path, never looked back. Just walked steadily, hands in pockets. We came to a clearing, our clearing, the RV, the fire ring down to ash now. Derek walked through the clearing and into the trees on the south side. I watched him go, waited. At 7 o'clock, footsteps circled the clearing. At 7:30, they came again. I tried the RV one more time. The engine caught, ran for 3 seconds, died. It's been 3 days now, I'm still here. Derek walks past at 6:30 every morning, heading south. At 6:30 every evening, heading south. Different routes, same direction, same destination. Yesterday I tried to follow the dirt road out again, walked for 4 hours, ended up back at our clearing. I tried hiking cross-country through the forest, same result. No matter which direction I go, I end up back here. The footsteps circle the clearing every 30 minutes now, day and night. I've stopped trying to see who makes them. This morning Derek walked past at 6:30 as usual, but this time he wasn't alone. Another figure walked beside him, maybe 10 feet away. Same steady pace, same direction. I couldn't see their face, but I recognized the jacket I'd been wearing the day we arrived. I'm writing this down because I need to remember there was a time when Derek was Derek, when I was myself, when we thought we could leave. I need to remember that there's a world outside this forest, outside this clearing, outside this endless pattern of footsteps and walking in circles. but I'm starting to forget what that world looks like. Tonight at 6:30, I'm going to start walking. South like Derek. Like the man in the red jacket, like all the others I'm starting to see between the trees. Maybe I'll find where they go. Maybe I'll understand. Or maybe I'll just walk in circles like everything else here. The fire's almost out. I should gather more wood, but I'm not sure it matters anymore. The sun will set whether I have a fire or not. The footsteps will circle whether I'm awake or asleep. And at 6:30, I'll walk past this clearing heading south, hands in my pockets, face forward, thinking about nothing at all except the next step and the step after that and the step after that. Forever. My name is Vanessa King. I saw myself across the clearing this morning, smiling, waving. She looked happy. Story 4, my name is Marcus Webb. This happened 3 months ago at Bear Lake, Utah, and I still can't sleep through the night. We weren't supposed to be there. The original plan was Yellowstone. Me, my girlfriend Jenna, and her sister Claire with Claire's boyfriend David. 4 adults in their late 20s looking for a cheap vacation before the summer crowds hit. But David's piece of shit RV broke down 20 miles outside of Garden City, and the only place that could look at it was closed until Monday. The mechanic pointed us toward a campground near the lake where we could wait it out. It's mostly locals, he said, wiping grease on his jeans. Real quiet this time of year. The campground was half empty when we arrived Friday afternoon. Maybe a dozen RVs scattered across a grid of numbered sites, most of them the expensive kind with slide-outs and satellite dishes. Ours looked like a metal shoebox on wheels. David had bought it off Craigslist from some guy in Boise, and it smelled like cigarettes and mildew no matter how much Febreze we sprayed. We pulled into Site 47, near the back corner where the trees got thick. The ranger who checked us in was a woman in her 60s, with short gray hair and bifocals on a chain. She made us fill out paperwork in the office, which was just a converted cabin with yellowed maps on the walls. You folks here for the whole weekend? She asked. Just until Monday, Jenna said. Car trouble. The ranger nodded slowly, looking at each of us in turn. Well, you picked a good spot. Nobody usually camps back in 47 this early in the season. Too close to the woods, people say. Too close how? Claire asked. The ranger didn't answer right away. She stapled our receipt and handed it over. Just make sure you keep your food locked up at night. We get bears sometimes. We set up camp without much trouble. David ran the electrical hookup while I helped the girls arrange the cramped interior. There was a tiny kitchen area, a fold-out table, and a bed above the cab that you reached by ladder. The back had a bigger mattress that converted from the dinette. We'd flipped a coin before leaving Idaho. Me and Jenna got the back, David and Claire got the cab. That first evening was normal. We grilled hot dogs on the fire pit, drank too much beer, and complained about David's RV like it was a shared enemy. Other campers were visible in the distance, their fires glowing orange in the dusk. Nobody came over to introduce themselves. The ranger drove past once in a golf cart around 9 p.m., shining a flashlight across our site but not stopping. Friendly place, David muttered. We turned in around 11. The RV was cramped with 4 people and the walls were thin enough that you could hear everything. Claire and David were quiet up front, but I could tell from the way the vehicle shifted that they were moving around. Jenna fell asleep fast, her breathing steady against my shoulder. I lay there listening to the wind in the trees and trying not to think about work on Monday. That's when I heard it. A woman's voice somewhere outside, singing. It wasn't loud, just a melody, no words I could make out. The kind of thing that makes you wonder if you're imagining it. I lay there for maybe 5 minutes listening before I realized Jenna was awake too. You hear that? She whispered. Yeah. We listened together. The singing continued, rising and falling with the wind. It sounded like it was coming from the woods behind our site. Should we check it out? Jenna asked. No. I don't know why I said it so fast. Something about the sound made my chest tight. It wasn't threatening exactly, just wrong. Like hearing a phone ring in an empty house. The singing stopped around midnight. I didn't remember falling asleep. Saturday morning was bright and cold. David was up first, banging around in the kitchenette and cursing under his breath because the coffee maker wasn't working. Claire stumbled down from the cab bed looking half dead, her blonde hair sticking up at weird angles. "Did you guys hear someone singing last night?" Jenna asked over instant oatmeal. Claire shook her head. "I didn't hear anything." "Me neither," David said. "You sure it wasn't a radio or something?" Jenna looked at me. I shrugged. Could have been another camper. "At midnight? In the woods?" David laughed. "Maybe it was a bear. A singing bear." Nobody brought it up again. We spent the morning exploring the area around the lake, skipping stones and taking pictures. The water was clear and cold, still half frozen in the shade. There were a few other people out, families with kids, an older couple walking a golden retriever, but nobody stayed long. By afternoon, the beach was empty except for us. We got back to the RV around 4. That's when we saw the tree. It was about 30 feet behind our site, just inside the tree line. A dead pine, gray and twisted, with branches that looked like broken fingers, and carved into the trunk about chest height were words. "Don't listen to her." The letters were big and crude, cut deep into the wood. Old enough that the edges had darkened with sap and weather, but fresh enough that you could still read them clearly. Claire saw it first. She was walking back from the bathroom and just stopped, staring. "What the fuck is that?" We all crowded around. The carving looked like it had been done with a knife or maybe an axe. Whoever did it had taken their time. "That's not creepy at all," David said. "Should we tell the ranger?" Jenna asked. "Tell her what? That someone carved something on a tree? Probably been there for years." But I kept staring at it. Something about the words made my stomach turn over. Not the content exactly. It was the kind of thing teenagers would carve as a joke. But the placement, right behind our site. Like it was meant for us. "Who's her?" Claire asked. Nobody answered. We spent the rest of the afternoon trying to ignore it, but the carving had changed something. The campground felt smaller somehow, more closed in. When evening came and we lit the fire, I kept glancing over my shoulder at the tree line, half expecting to see someone standing there. Around 7 p.m., an old man walked past our site. He was thin and bent, wearing a flannel jacket and a John Deere cap. He nodded at us but didn't stop. "Excuse me," Jenna called out. "Can I ask you something?" The old man paused, looking back with watery blue eyes. "There's a tree back there with something carved into it. Do you know anything about that?" His expression didn't change. "I'd mind my own business if I was you." "We're just curious." I said, "Mind your business." He turned and kept walking, disappearing around a bend in the road. "Jesus," Claire muttered. "What's his problem?" David threw another log on the fire. "Forget it. People out here are weird. Let's just drink and not think about it." We tried, we really did. But the conversation kept dying, and the silences got longer. Around 9 p.m. we heard the singing again. This time it was closer. It came from the woods directly behind us, the same wordless melody from the night before. But now it was clear enough that I could hear the voice properly. A woman's voice, high and sweet, like a lullaby. And underneath it, just barely audible, another sound. Footsteps, moving through the underbrush. "Okay, that's definitely someone out there," Claire said. David stood up, grabbing his flashlight. "I'm gonna check it out." "Don't," I said. "Why not? Someone's fucking with us." "Just leave it alone." He ignored me and walked toward the tree line, shining his light into the darkness. The singing stopped immediately. For maybe 30 seconds there was complete silence. No wind, no insects, nothing. Then David turned around, his face pale in the firelight. "There's nobody there." "You sure?" Jenna asked. "I'm looking right at the woods, there's nobody." But his hands were shaking. We went inside after that. Nobody said much. Claire suggested playing cards, but gave up after one hand. Around 11, we decided to just go to sleep. Jenna climbed into bed first, and I followed, pulling the thin blanket over us. "This place sucks," she whispered. "One more day, then we're gone." She rolled over to face me. "That carving, don't listen to her. What if what? What if it's not a joke? What if someone's warning us about something? I didn't have an answer for that. We lay there in the dark, listening to David and Claire settling in up front. The RV creaked and shifted with every movement. The singing started again at 12:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I was staring at my phone, trying to fall asleep. This time it was right outside the RV. The voice was so close I could hear the individual notes, the slight vibrato at the end of each phrase. It was coming from just beyond the thin metal wall, maybe 3 feet from where I was lying. I felt Jenna's hand grip my arm. Marcus. I know. Up front, I heard David moving. The cab door opened and closed. Then his voice, muffled but clear. Hello? Who's out there? The singing stopped. I don't know how long we waited in the silence. Maybe a minute, maybe 5. Then David climbed back inside, his footsteps heavy on the flimsy floor. Nobody, he said. There's nobody out there. We all heard it, Claire said. Someone was singing. I'm telling you, there's nobody. I walked all the way around the RV, nothing. I got up and looked out the small window above the bed. David was right. The campground was empty, our fire reduced to coals. The moon was bright enough that I could see clear across to the other sites. Not a single person, not a single moving shadow. This is bullshit, Claire said. Someone's messing with us. Who? David asked. There's nobody here. Then where's the singing coming from? None of us had an answer. We didn't sleep much after that. Every sound made us jump, branches scraping the roof, the RV settling on its suspension, wind rattling the windows. Around 3 a.m., I heard Jenna crying quietly beside me. I put my arm around her but didn't say anything. What was there to say? When morning finally came, we were all exhausted and on edge. David made coffee in silence while Claire sat at the table with her arms crossed, staring at nothing. Jenna wouldn't look at me. We should leave, she said finally. The RV's still broken, David reminded her. Then we call an Uber. Or rent a car. I don't care. I want to leave. And go where? We're 200 miles from home. You want to pay for a hotel for 2 nights while we wait for the mechanic? I don't care about the money. Well, I do. We're staying. Jenna stood up, her chair scraping loudly. Fine. I'm going for a walk. She left before I could follow. I found her 10 minutes later sitting on a bench near the lake, her arms wrapped around herself even though the morning was warm. Hey, I said, sitting down beside her. She didn't look at me. I want to go home. I know. Something's wrong here. I can feel it. I wanted to tell her she was overreacting, that it was just some local kids playing a prank, or maybe she was stressed and her imagination was running wild. But I couldn't, because I felt it too. That crawling sensation under my skin, like being watched by something that wasn't quite human. One more day, I said. Tomorrow we pick up the RV and we're gone, okay? She nodded but didn't seem convinced. We spent most of Sunday avoiding the campsite. We drove into Garden City for lunch, walked around the lake, killed time at a gas station reading magazines we didn't buy. Anything to avoid going back. But eventually the sun started setting, and we didn't have a choice. When we pulled in, the ranger was waiting for us. She was standing next to our RV with her arms crossed, and something about her posture made my stomach drop. As soon as David parked, she walked over, her face unreadable behind those bifocals. You folks need to move sites, she said. Why? David asked. Just move. I've got spot 12 available closer to the front. We're leaving tomorrow morning anyway. I don't care when you're leaving. You need to move tonight. There was something in her voice that killed any argument. We packed up in silence, the ranger watching from her golf cart the entire time. It took maybe 40 minutes to unhook everything and drive to the new site. Spot 12 was near the entrance, surrounded by other RVs and a streetlight that hummed with electricity. The ranger drove off without another word. What the hell was that about? Claire asked. Nobody answered. We set up the new site quickly, not bothering with chairs or a fire pit. The sun was already down and none of us wanted to be outside longer than necessary. That night, we locked every door and window. David even wedged a chair under the main door handle. We sat around the table playing cards with the lights on, nobody mentioning the obvious, that we were all terrified. Around 10 p.m., someone knocked on the door. We all froze. The knock came again, 3 slow taps. "Who is it?" David called out. No answer, just another knock. David looked at me. I shook my head, but he ignored me and went to the door. He moved the chair aside and cracked it open, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Nobody's here," he said. "What?" "There's nobody at the door." He opened it wider and I could see for myself. The steps were empty. The campground beyond was quiet. Other RVs lit from within, a few people visible in the distance. David closed the door and locked it again. "Probably just kids." "That wasn't kids," Jenna said. We tried to go back to cards, but nobody could concentrate. Around 11, we gave up and decided to sleep. Jenna climbed into bed, still wearing her jeans and hoodie, like she wanted to be ready to run. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling. The singing started at midnight, but this time it wasn't outside. It was inside the RV. The voice was coming from the cab right where Claire and David were sleeping. That same high, sweet melody, wordless and wrong. I heard David shout and then a crash as something fell. Jenna grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. "Stay here," I said, climbing out of bed. The narrow hallway to the cab was dark. I could hear Claire crying and David's voice high and panicked. Stop it, what are you doing?" I reached the cab and froze. Claire was sitting up in bed facing away from me. She was singing. Her voice was perfect, each note precise and clear, but her body was completely still, like a mannequin. David was pressed against the far wall, his face white. "Claire?" I said. She stopped singing. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then very slowly, Claire turned her head to look at me. Her eyes were wrong. I don't know how else to describe it. They were her eyes, same brown color, same shape. But the expression in them was like looking at a stranger. She smiled, and it didn't reach those eyes at all. "Don't listen to her," she said in a voice that wasn't hers. Then she blinked and gasped, and she was Claire again. Normal Claire, confused and scared. What happened? Why are you all looking at me like that?" David was shaking. "You were singing." "What? No, I wasn't. I was asleep." "Claire, you were sitting up and singing. I tried to wake you up and you wouldn't stop." She looked at him, then at me. "I don't remember that. I was dreaming about something, but I don't." She started crying. We spent the rest of the night in the front area, all 4 of us with every light on. Nobody slept. Claire kept apologizing even though none of us blamed her. David held her and kept saying it was okay, but I could see in his face that he was terrified. Of what, I wasn't sure. Maybe of Claire, maybe of whatever had been using her voice. When the sun finally came up, we were packed and ready to go in 20 minutes. David drove straight to the mechanic's shop, speeding the whole way. The mechanic said the RV needed another day, maybe 2. David didn't argue. He told the guy to junk it, and we called a rental company. We were on the road by 9 a.m. Nobody talked about what happened. Not in the rental car, not on the drive home, not ever. We just drove in silence, and when we finally crossed the state line into Idaho, I felt something release in my chest. That was 3 months ago. We don't talk anymore, the 4 of us. Claire and David broke up 2 weeks after we got back. Jenna and I are still together, but she has nightmares. Sometimes I wake up and find her sitting on the edge of the bed staring at the wall, and when I ask what's wrong, she just shakes her head. I've tried to look up information about that campground. Bear Lake has plenty of stories. Local legends, ghost sightings, the usual tourist trap nonsense. But I can't find anything about Site 47, or singing in the woods, or that carving in the tree. Sometimes late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about Claire's face when she turned to look at me. That smile, those eyes, and I wonder if whatever was in those woods is still there. If it's waiting in Site 47 for the next group of people stupid enough to camp there. If the ranger moves them too, or if we were special somehow. Last week I got a text from an unknown number. Just 4 words. Don't listen to her. I blocked it immediately. But yesterday I got another one, from a different number. She's still singing. I haven't told Jenna. I don't plan to. Because the worst part isn't the texts, or the nightmares, or the way I sometimes hear that melody in the white noise of traffic. The worst part is that 2 nights ago I woke up at 3 a.m. to find Jenna standing at the foot of our bed. She was perfectly still, facing away from me, and she was humming. Story 5. My name is Henry Foster. I shouldn't have seen that trail, not unless I was dying. I'm telling you this now because I need someone to understand what happened at Fish Lake National Forest in Utah, back in September of last year. I was 43 years old, recently divorced, working as an insurance adjuster in Salt Lake City. The kind of job where you see people at their worst and learn to keep your distance emotionally. I'd been feeling off for months, tired all the time, losing weight without trying, occasional chest pains I kept ignoring. My ex-wife Jennifer kept texting me to see a doctor. I kept saying I would. Instead, I took 2 weeks off and drove my father's old RV out to Fish Lake. My dad died 3 years ago and the RV had been sitting in storage ever since. It's a 1998 Winnebago Brave, cream-colored with brown stripes, smells like old coffee and the pine air freshener my dad always kept hanging from the rear view. I told myself I was just getting away from the city, clearing my head. Really, I think I was looking for some connection to him. The campsite was half empty when I arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Late September in Utah means the summer tourists are gone, and the winter sports crowd hasn't arrived yet. I paid for a week at the ranger station. A tired-looking woman in her 50s named Deborah, who barely looked up from her phone. She handed me a map with the RV sites marked, reminded me about bear protocols, and went back to scrolling. I picked a spot near the back of the campground, away from the 2 other occupied sites I could see. Site 47. The ground was level, surrounded by aspens that had already started turning gold. There was a picnic table with someone's initials carved into it, JM plus RT 1987, and a metal fire ring that looked like it hadn't been used in years. I got the RV set up, which took longer than it should have because I'd never actually done it before. My dad always handled that part. By the time I had the hookups connected and the awning extended, it was getting dark. I made a frozen pizza in the little oven and ate it at the picnic table, watching the sun set through the trees. The temperature dropped fast once the sun was gone. I could see my breath. There were no sounds except wind in the aspens and the occasional creak of tree branches. I'd expected to feel peaceful. Instead, I felt isolated in a way that wasn't comfortable, like the forest was too big and I was too small. I went to bed around 10, laying in the cramped bed over the cab that still smelled like my father's old spice. I couldn't sleep. My chest hurt. Not sharp, just this dull pressure that made it hard to breathe deeply. I kept thinking I should drive back to Salt Lake in the morning, go to urgent care, but I didn't want to admit that something might actually be wrong. Around 2 in the morning, I finally fell asleep. I woke up at dawn because someone was knocking on the RV door. Not pounding, not urgent, just 3 measured knocks. Then silence. I laid there for a minute, disoriented, my heart beating too fast. The knocking came again. Same rhythm. 3 knocks, deliberate, patient. I climbed down from the bed and went to the door in my boxers and t-shirt. Through the small window I could see the campsite was empty. Gray morning light filtered through the trees. No one was standing by the door. I opened it anyway. Hello? The cold air hit me immediately. My site looked exactly as I'd left it the night before. Empty. The picnic table. The unused fire ring. My car parked next to the RV. Beyond that, just trees and the dirt road leading back to the main campground. I closed the door and locked it. Told myself it was probably just a branch falling against the side of the RV. The wind. Something. I made coffee and sat at the small dinette table, looking out the window. The aspens were beautiful in the morning light. I could see why my dad loved coming out here, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The kind of feeling you get when you walk into your house and everything looks normal, but you just know someone's been there. I got dressed and decided to take a walk to clear my head. The chest pain was still there, maybe worse than yesterday. I should have paid attention to that. There was a trail that started near my campsite marked with a wooden post. The sign said, Aspen Loop Trail, 2.3 miles, with an arrow pointing into the trees. I'd seen it marked on Deborah's map, an easy loop, good for morning hikes. Except when I looked at the trailhead that morning, there were two trails. The main trail was obvious. Well-worn dirt path, clear markers, the official wooden sign. But next to it, maybe 15 feet to the left, there was another path. Narrower, less defined, but definitely a trail. It had a small cairn at the entrance, just 3 stacked rocks. No sign, no markers beyond that. I stared at it for a long moment. I'm not an experienced hiker, but I've been on enough trails to know that official parks don't usually have unmarked side trails just sitting there. And I was certain it hadn't been there yesterday when I drove past to get to my site. I walked closer to the narrow trail. The ground showed signs of recent use, compressed dirt, a few boot prints, but something about those prints bothered me. They all seemed to be going in, none coming back out. The chest pain flared and I had to stop and breathe slowly. My left arm was tingling. I recognized the symptoms even as I tried to dismiss them. A rational person would have gone back to the RV, would have driven to the ranger station and asked Deborah about the unmarked trail, would have gone to a hospital. Instead, I started walking down the narrow path. I can't fully explain why. Part of it was stubbornness. The same stubbornness that had kept me from going to a doctor for months. Part of it was something else. A pull. Like the trail was meant for me specifically. The path wound through the aspens, gradually ascending. It wasn't steep, but my breathing got labored quickly. The tingling in my arm was constant now. I stopped every few minutes telling myself I'd turn back after the next rise, after I saw what was around the next bend. The forest was completely silent. No birds, no squirrels, no wind, just my footsteps on packed earth and my own breathing, which sounded too loud in the stillness. After maybe 30 minutes, though it felt longer, the trail opened into a small clearing. There was a wooden structure in the center. Not a cabin exactly. More like a shelter, open on 3 sides with a peaked roof. Inside was a picnic table and what looked like an old logbook in a weatherproof container. I approached slowly. The shelter looked old but maintained. The wood was weathered but solid. Someone had carved something into one of the support posts, but the letters were worn, and I couldn't make out what it said. The logbook was inside a plastic case bolted to the table. I opened it. The entries went back years. Different handwriting, different dates. But as I flipped through the pages, I realized something was wrong. Every entry was a name and a date, nothing else. No comments about the hike or the weather, just names and dates. Michael Brennan, June 3, 2019. Sarah Liu, August 17, 2020. David Martinez, November 2, 2021. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. I flipped to the most recent entries. Catherine Foster, March 14, 2023. I stopped breathing. Foster, my last name. I flipped forward. The next page was blank except for one entry at the top, written in handwriting I didn't recognize but somehow looked familiar. Henry Foster, September 28, 2023. Today's date. My hand was shaking as I closed the logbook. The chest pain was worse now, spreading down my arm up into my jaw. I knew what was happening. Part of me had known all morning. I turned to leave the shelter and stopped. There was someone standing at the edge of the clearing. A man, maybe in his 60s, wearing clothes that looked like they were from a different era. Canvas pants, a wool shirt, heavy boots. He was just standing there watching me. His face was weathered and deeply lined, but his eyes were bright and clear. "You found it," he said. His voice was quiet but carried across the clearing. "That means you're dying." I wanted to argue, to laugh it off. But the pain in my chest was undeniable now. "I don't understand." I managed to say. The trail only appears for people who are dying, the man said, walking slowly toward the shelter. Usually heart attacks, sometimes strokes, aneurysms, other things. The trail shows itself when your body knows it's failing. He sat down at the picnic table like we were having a casual conversation. Who are you? I asked. David Martinez, November 2nd, 2021. He gestured to the logbook. I was hiking with my wife when the heart attack hit. Massive one. I wandered off the main trail, confused, in pain. Found this place. Signed the book because it seemed important. Then I kept walking. You died? Eventually. Made it maybe another mile up the trail before everything just stopped. He looked at me with something like sympathy. But that was years ago. For you anyway. Time works different here. I should have been terrified. Instead, I just felt tired. I need to get back, I said. I need to call 911. You can try, David said. Some people do make it back, not many. The trail is long and you're not in good shape, but you can try. I turned and started back the way I'd come. The pain was intense now, radiating through my chest, down both arms. My vision was starting to blur at the edges. The trail back seemed longer than the walk in. The trees all looked the same. I couldn't tell if I was going the right direction. I found myself back at the shelter. David was still sitting there waiting. It loops, he said. Unless you know the way. The trail wants you to go forward, not back. I'm not dead yet, I said. The words came out slurred. No. But you're dying, and this place exists for people who are dying. It's like a waiting room, between life and whatever comes after. I sat down heavily on the ground outside the shelter. I couldn't stand anymore. The others in the book, I said. Did they all die? Most of them. Some were found by hikers, brought back, survived, but they never could find this trail again. Only shows itself once. Why? David shrugged. I've had a long time to think about it. Best I can figure, the trail is a gift. A chance to make peace. To understand that this is it. Most people don't get that, they just drop. Here you get time to process. I don't want time to process, I want to live. Then you need to get back to your RV before your heart stops completely. Call for help. He pointed deeper into the clearing where another path led into the forest. The trail continues that way. It'll take you to wherever people like us go. Or you can try to find your way back. Your choice. I tried to stand. Couldn't. My legs wouldn't support me. David watched without offering to help. How long do I have? I asked. Minutes. Maybe an hour if you're lucky. Hard to say. Time is strange here. I managed to get to my hands and knees. Started crawling toward where I thought the trail back might be. Every movement sent fire through my chest. I don't know how long I crawled. Long enough that the sun seemed to move across the sky too fast, like watching time-lapse photography. Long enough that I started seeing other people on the trail. Some nodded at me as they passed, heading toward the shelter. Others ignored me completely. A woman in hiking gear stopped and crouched next to me. She looked young, maybe 30, with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. You're going the wrong way, she said. The trail only goes forward. I need to get back to my RV. No, you don't. You need to accept what's happening. Fuck you, I said, and kept crawling. She laughed, but not meanly. Good luck, she said, and continued past me toward the shelter. The trees started to look familiar. Or maybe they all just looked the same. I couldn't tell anymore. Then I saw it. The RV, Site 47, the picnic table with the carved initials. I'd made it back. I crawled faster, ignoring the pain, ignoring the way my vision was tunneling. Just had to get to the door, get inside, find my phone. I reached the RV and pulled myself up using the door handle, got it open, fell inside. My phone was on the dinette table where I'd left it. I grabbed it, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. Dialed 911. It rang once, twice. 911, what's your emergency? I'm having a heart attack, I said. My voice sounded far away. I'm at Fish Lake National Forest, campsite 47. Please send help. Sir, stay on the line. We're dispatching emergency services to your location now. Are you having chest pain? Yes, and my arms. Can't breathe right. Is there anyone with you? No, I'm alone. Stay on the line with me, help is on the way. I could hear her typing, hear her voice giving instructions to someone else. The world was getting darker around the edges. Sir, are you still with me? I'm here, I said, but I wasn't sure if any sound came out. I don't remember much after that. Fragments, the sound of sirens in the distance, voices, hands on me, moving me, the ceiling of the RV, then the inside of an ambulance, bright lights, someone asking me questions I couldn't answer. I woke up in a hospital room 3 days later. The doctor told me I'd had a major heart attack. They'd had to do emergency surgery, put in 3 stents. I'd been clinically dead for almost 2 minutes in the ambulance. They brought me back. Jennifer came to visit. She cried and told me I was an idiot for not going to a doctor sooner. I agreed with her. Deborah from the ranger station came by too, which surprised me. She brought me the belongings they'd collected from my RV before towing it back to Salt Lake. My wallet, my keys, some clothes. She said she was glad I was okay. Do you know about the unmarked trail? I asked her. Near Site 47, small cairn at the entrance. She looked confused. There's only the Aspen Loop Trail near that site. Nothing unmarked that I know of. There was another trail. I walked it the morning I had the heart attack. You were having a heart attack, Mr. Foster. You might have been confused, disoriented. Maybe. But I didn't think so. They kept me in the hospital for a week. Cardiac rehab, medication, diet plans, lifestyle changes, all the things I should have been doing years ago. When I was finally released, Jennifer drove me home. We didn't get back together, not too much had happened for that, but we were talking again. She made me promise to go to all my follow-up appointments. I did. I started taking better care of myself. Lost 40 pounds, cut back on work stress. Started therapy to deal with the anxiety and depression I'd been ignoring. But I kept thinking about the trail, about David Martinez sitting at that shelter, waiting, about the logbook with my name already written in it. 6 months after the heart attack, I drove back to Fish Lake National Forest. I parked at the main office and asked Deborah if she had a moment. She remembered me, seemed genuinely happy to see me looking healthier. I need to ask you something, I said. Have you ever heard of a trail that only appears to people who are dying? She frowned. That's a strange question. I know, but have you? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out a folder from her desk drawer. It was old. The paper yellowed. There are stories, she said slowly. My predecessor mentioned something once. She'd been working here for 30 years. Said sometimes hikers would come back claiming they'd found a trail that wasn't on any map. Always people who'd had medical emergencies or close calls. Heart attacks mostly. She thought they were confused, suffering from oxygen deprivation or shock. Did she ever try to find the trail? She did. Spent years looking. Never found anything. Deborah looked at me carefully. Did you see something out there, Mr. Foster? I don't know. Maybe. She opened the folder and showed me papers inside. Reports dating back decades. Missing persons who were last seen at Fish Lake, medical emergencies that happened on trails, and a list of names. I recognized some of them from the logbook. These people were all found? I asked. Some of them, others were never found. We search, but Fish Lake is huge, easy to get turned around, especially if you're in medical distress. She closed the folder. Why are you asking about this? Just curious, I said. Thank you for showing me. I left the ranger station and drove to Site 47. It was occupied, a family with kids, their RV much newer than my dad's had been. I parked nearby and walked to where I remembered the trailhead. The Aspen Loop Trail was there, clearly marked, but there was no second trail, no cairn, nothing. I stood there for a long time looking into the forest. The thing is, I know what I saw. I know where I walked. The trail was real. David Martinez was real. But I also know I was dying. My brain was starving for oxygen. I could have been hallucinating the whole thing, except for one detail that bothers me. When they brought me my belongings from the RV, there was something that shouldn't have been there. A small rock, smooth and rounded, tucked into the pocket of my jacket. I didn't put it there. I don't remember picking up any rocks, but it looks exactly like the kind of rock you'd use to build a cairn. I keep it on my desk now, at my apartment in Salt Lake City. I look at it sometimes and wonder, the trail that only appears to the dying, is it real? Is it some kind of neurological phenomenon? The brain's way of processing imminent death? Or is it something else entirely, something that exists in the space between living and dying? I don't have answers. What I know is this. I was dying, and something showed me a choice, a path forward, toward whatever comes after, or a path back to life if I was strong enough to take it. I chose to come back. But sometimes late at night when my chest feels tight and I worry that the heart attack might return, I think about that trail, about the shelter, about David Martinez, who took the other path and seemed at peace with it, and I wonder if, when my time really comes, the trail will appear again. I wonder if I'll take it. The doctors say I'm doing well. My heart is healing. I'm healthier than I've been in years. I might have decades left. But I also know that time is finite, that eventually everyone finds themselves on that trail, whether they want to or not. I just hope that when I do, I'll be ready, and I hope someone finds this account and understands. The trail is real. It exists somewhere between life and death, between the forest and whatever lies beyond. You can't find it unless you're dying. But if you do find it, remember, you have a choice. You can always try to come back. My name is Henry Foster. I saw the trail that only appears to the dying, and I'm still here to tell you about it. For now, Story 6. My name is Emma Davis. I'm writing this from a motel room in Flagstaff, 300 miles from where it happened. The owner keeps asking if I'm okay because I haven't left the room in 4 days except to buy bottled water and granola bars from the vending machine. I tell him I'm fine. I'm not fine. This happened 2 weeks ago at Mather Campground in Grand Canyon National Park, Arizona. I need to write it down before I start questioning what I remember. Already, some details feel slippery, like they're trying to rearrange themselves into something that makes sense. But it doesn't make sense. None of it does. I went to the Grand Canyon with my boyfriend Marcus and our friends Jen and Tyler. We'd planned the trip for months. Marcus and I had been together for 3 years and things had been rocky lately. Not fighting exactly, just distant. The kind of distance that grows so slowly you don't notice until you're standing on opposite sides of a room, wondering when you stopped reaching for each other. The trip was supposed to fix that. 4 days of hiking, stargazing, and disconnecting from our phones. Tyler had just bought a new Winnebago Mini Winnie, one of those compact RVs that sleeps 4 if everyone likes each other enough. He was excited to try it out, and Jen was excited because she'd never been to the Grand Canyon. I was excited because I thought maybe getting away would remind Marcus and me why we'd gotten together in the first place. We arrived on a Thursday afternoon in late September. The campground was about half full, mostly families and retired couples. The trees were sparse, pinyon pines and junipers, and the ground was red dirt and rock. Our site was E17, tucked against the eastern edge of the loop. There was a fire ring, a picnic table, and enough space to park the RV with room for our tent. We didn't need the tent. The RV had a bed over the cab for Marcus and me, and Jen and Tyler would take the convertible dinette. But Marcus insisted on setting up the tent anyway, said he wanted the authentic camping experience. I didn't argue. I was trying not to argue about anything. The first night was fine. We built a fire in the ring, roasted hot dogs, drank beer. Tyler told a long story about getting lost in Zion last year, and Jen showed us photos from her sister's wedding. Marcus sat close to me but not touching. Around 11 we put out the fire and went to bed. I say we put out the fire. What I mean is we dumped 2 buckets of water on it, stirred the ashes with a stick, and poured another bucket for good measure. The fire ring was cold to the touch. I remember because I ran my hand along the stones before we went inside. When I woke up around 3 in the morning to pee, the fire was burning again. Not roaring, just a small flame, maybe 6 inches high, crackling softly in the center of the ring. I stood at the RV window and stared at it for a long time. I was groggy, and my first thought was that we hadn't put it out properly, but I'd felt the cold stones. I'd watched Tyler stir the ashes into black mud. I didn't wake anyone. I put on my shoes and went outside with the water jug. The night was cold and perfectly still. The flame didn't waver when I approached. I poured the entire jug on it, watched the water sizzle and steam. The fire went out. Back in bed, I told myself I'd been half asleep. Campfires sometimes have hot spots that reignite. It happened. I'd learned that in Girl Scouts or something. I rolled over and went back to sleep. In the morning, Marcus made coffee on the RV's propane stove while Jen and Tyler argued about whether to hike the South Rim Trail or the Bright Angel Trail. I looked out the window at the fire ring. The ashes were dry, not muddy dry, like they hadn't been soaked 6 hours earlier. "Did anyone mess with the fire last night?" I asked. Tyler looked up from his oatmeal. "What do you mean?" "It was burning again, around 3. "Burning?" Jen frowned. "We drowned it." "I know, but it was lit. I had to put it out again." Marcus came over and kissed the top of my head. "You were probably dreaming." "I wasn't." "Okay." He said it the way you say okay to a child who insists they saw a monster. "Well, it's out now." We hiked the South Rim Trail. It was beautiful. The canyon stretched out like something from another planet. Layers of red and orange and purple stone dropping away into impossible depth. We took photos, ate sandwiches at a viewpoint, and by the time we got back to the campground that evening, I'd convinced myself Marcus was right. I'd been dreaming, or half awake and confused. We built another fire that night. Tyler had bought a bundle of wood from the camp store and we cooked bratwursts on skewers. The moon was nearly full, and the firelight made our shadows dance across the RV's white exterior. We played cards. Tyler won 5 hands of rummy in a row and Jen accused him of cheating, which made everyone laugh. Marcus's leg pressed against mine under the picnic table. Around midnight, we put out the fire. Same routine, 3 buckets of water, stirring, checking for heat. The ring was cold. We went to bed. At 3:06 a.m., I woke up because Marcus wasn't next to me. I sat up, disoriented, and saw him standing at the window. "What's wrong?" I whispered. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "The fire's burning." I climbed out of bed and looked. He was right. Same small flame crackling quietly in the ring, casting a warm orange glow on the dirt. "What the hell?" I said. We both stared at it for maybe 30 seconds. Then Marcus said, "Maybe there's something in the wood, like chemicals or something, making it spontaneously combust." "That's not a thing." "You got a better explanation?" I didn't. We went outside together this time. The night was colder than the previous one, and the stars were dense overhead. The flame burned steady and bright, about 8 inches tall now. When we got close, I could feel the heat. Marcus grabbed a stick and poked at the wood. It fell apart, into embers, still glowing. "Jesus," he muttered. He dumped a bucket of water on it. The fire hissed, smoked, and died. We stood there for a minute, waiting to see if it would reignite. It didn't. "Maybe we're not putting it out right," Marcus said. "Maybe we need to spread out the coals more or something." "We're putting it out right. Emma, fires don't just relight themselves." "I know that." We went back inside. I didn't sleep. I kept waiting for Marcus to get up again, to tell me it had come back, but he started snoring around 4 and I just lay there listening to him breathe. In the morning, the ashes were dry again. I didn't mention it at breakfast. Jen made pancakes on the propane griddle, and Tyler showed us a brochure for a helicopter tour of the canyon. Marcus suggested we drive to the Desert View watchtower. Everyone seemed happy, relaxed. I didn't want to be the person who made things weird, but when we got back that afternoon and started setting up for another fire, I said, maybe we shouldn't. Tyler was crouched by the ring, arranging kindling. Shouldn't what? Have a fire tonight. Jen laughed. What are we supposed to do, sit in the dark? We have the RV lights. Emma. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. It's fine. We'll just make sure we put it out properly. I wanted to explain that we had put it out properly, that something was wrong with the fire ring or the ground beneath it or something I couldn't name. But the way they were all looking at me made me feel like I was overreacting. Fine, I said. We built the fire. We cooked dinner. We talked about work and friends and places we wanted to travel. Around 11, we put it out the same way we had the previous nights. I insisted we use 5 buckets of water this time. Marcus didn't argue. He helped me stir the ashes until they were soup, and we both felt the stones to confirm they were cold. At 3:06 a.m., the fire was burning again. This time, all 4 of us saw it. Jen woke up first and shook Tyler awake, and Tyler said, "What the fuck?" loud enough to wake Marcus and me. We all crowded around the RV windows and stared at the flame. It was bigger now, maybe a foot tall, and it burned with an intensity that made the shadows around the campsite flicker and jump. Okay, Jen said. That's not normal. We got dressed and went outside. The other campsites were dark and quiet. Our fire was the only light in the entire loop. When we got close to it, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The flames weren't quite the right color. Normal campfire flames are orange and yellow with blue at the base. These flames were orange and yellow, but there was something off about them. They looked almost pink in places. And they didn't make noise. No crackling, no popping, just a soft, constant whisper. Is it me, or does that sound like breathing? Jen asked. It did. It sounded exactly like breathing. Tyler grabbed a bucket and filled it from the water spigot near our site. He poured it on the fire. The flames shrank but didn't go out. He poured another bucket. The flames flickered, lowered, then surged back up. What the hell? Marcus said. He grabbed the shovel we'd brought for digging a latrine trench and started scooping ash and ember out of the ring, flinging it onto the dirt several feet away. The embers glowed where they landed, bright and defiant. Tyler helped, and together they emptied the entire contents of the fire ring onto the ground around us. The fire kept burning in the empty ring. Not embers, not coals. Actual flames, rising from bare stone and dirt. Jen made a sound like a whimper. I want to leave. We can't just leave, Tyler said. It's 3 a.m. I don't care. We can't leave a fire burning, Marcus said. His voice was tight. They'll fine us, or ban us. We need to put it out. How? I asked. We dumped the whole ring and it's still burning. Nobody answered. We stood in a circle around the fire, watching it breathe. Finally, Tyler said, I'm going to get the camp host. He left. The rest of us stayed because leaving felt like giving up, and giving up felt like admitting something we weren't ready to admit. The fire burned steady. The pink tinge in the flames was more obvious now. Pink, like flesh. Pink, like the inside of a mouth. Tyler came back 20 minutes later, followed by a middle-aged man in a ranger uniform and a fleece jacket. They said you've got a fire that won't go out? The ranger said. He had a flashlight, and he shined it on the ring, then at us. You folks been drinking? We put it out 3 times, Marcus said. It keeps relighting. The ranger walked over and looked at the fire. He crouched down, squinted at it. Then he stood up and said, Well, that's unusual. Can you put it out? Jen asked. He tried. He had a fire extinguisher in his truck, the kind with foam, and he emptied the entire thing into the ring. The foam hissed and bubbled and turned gray. The flames went out. We all stood there, watching the foam settle, waiting. The fire came back. Same height, same pink-tinged color, same soft breathing sound. The ranger took off his hat and rubbed his head. Huh, he said. Huh? Tyler repeated. That's it, huh? I've been working here 11 years. Never seen anything like this. He walked around the ring, looking at it from different angles. You didn't bury anything in there, did you? Batteries, chemicals? No, I said. And you're sure you put it out? Yes. He stared at the fire for another minute. Then he said, I'm going to call someone. You folks should probably go inside and get some sleep. I'll have this sorted by morning. We didn't sleep. We sat in the RV with the lights on, watching the fire through the window. The ranger made several phone calls, then sat in his truck with the engine running. Around 4:30, another ranger arrived. A woman with gray hair pulled into a braid. They both walked around the fire, talking in low voices. At one point, the woman poured something from a canister onto the flames. They roared higher, then settled back to their original height. When the sun came up, the fire was still burning. The two rangers approached the RV. Marcus opened the door. The woman said, We're going to need you to pack up and move to a different site. What about the fire? I asked. We're working on it, the male ranger said. But we can't have you staying this close to it until we figure out what's going on. What do you think is going on? Tyler asked. The rangers exchanged a glance. Could be a gas leak, the woman said. Natural methane venting from underground. Happens sometimes in areas with geological activity. Does it usually burn pink? Jen asked. The woman didn't answer. They moved us to a site on the other side of the campground. It took 2 hours to unhook and rehook the RV, and by the time we were settled, I was exhausted. Marcus suggested we just go home, skip the last 2 days of the trip. Jen agreed, but Tyler had already paid for the full reservation, and he didn't want to lose the money. It's a weird fire, he said. That's all. It's not going to follow us. We tried to salvage the day. We drove to the Desert View watchtower, walked around the gift shop, took photos from the overlook. But none of us were really present. We kept checking our phones, expecting a call from the rangers saying they'd figured it out. It was a gas leak or a prank or something explainable. The call never came. When we got back to the campground around 6, our old site, E17, was cordoned off with yellow caution tape. There were 3 ranger vehicles parked nearby and a small crowd of curious campers standing at a distance, watching. The fire was still burning, bigger now. The flames were at least 3 feet high, and the pink color was unmistakable. It looked wrong, obscene, like something that shouldn't exist in daylight. Jesus Christ, Marcus said. We parked at our new site and walked over. One of the rangers, a young guy with a sunburned nose, stopped us before we got too close. You need to stay back, he said. That's our campsite, Tyler said. Or it was. I know. We're working on it. Working on what? I asked. What's happening? He hesitated. Then he said, We don't know. That night we didn't build a fire. We heated soup on the propane stove and ate inside the RV. Nobody talked much. Jen kept looking at her phone, scrolling through news articles and local forums, trying to find anything about fires that wouldn't go out. She found stories about eternal flames, natural gas leaks that had been burning for decades, but nothing like what we'd seen. Around 10, Marcus and I went for a walk. The campground was quiet, most sites dark. We walked the loop until we reached the caution tape around E17. The fire was still burning, 4 feet tall now, maybe taller. The pink had deepened to something close to red, and the sound had changed. It wasn't breathing anymore. It sounded like humming, low and rhythmic, almost musical. We should leave tomorrow, Marcus said. Yeah. He took my hand. We stood there for a while watching the fire burn. Then he said, I'm sorry. For what? For how I've been. Distant. I didn't realize how much until this trip. I squeezed his hand. Me too. We went back to the RV. Jen and Tyler were already in bed, whispering to each other in the dark. Marcus and I climbed into the loft. He wrapped his arms around me and I pressed my face against his chest, and for the first time in days I felt like maybe things would be okay. At 3:06 a.m. I woke up. The RV was silent except for Tyler's snoring. I lay there for a minute, trying to figure out what had woken me. Then I realized the humming. I could hear it even from our new site, a low vibration that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I climbed down from the loft and looked out the window. The fire at E17 was visible through the trees, a red glow against the black sky. It was taller now, much taller. The flames reached at least 10 feet high, twisting and writhing like something alive. I should have woken Marcus. I should have called the Rangers. Instead, I put on my shoes and went outside. The campground was deserted. I walked toward E17 past dark RVs and silent tents. The humming grew louder as I got closer, and I realized it had words. Not English, nothing I recognized, but definitely words. A chant or a song. When I reached the caution tape, I stopped. The fire was massive now, a column of red flame that climbed 20 feet into the air. The heat was intense even from 15 feet away. The humming filled my ears, my head, my chest. It felt like it was coming from inside me, and then I saw the shapes in the flames. Not faces exactly. More like the suggestion of faces. Mouths opening and closing in time with the humming. Eyes that weren't eyes but darker spots in the red, tracking my movement. I knew I should run. I knew I should scream. But I couldn't move. One of the shapes pushed forward, stretching the flames outward.